brutally shot during the shootout with police in Marenville area in Durban this morning. It's alleged the suspect was shot for a number of cases of murder which happened around Marenville area.
Police in Limpopo have arrested over 400 suspects for various crimes during their crime-combating Operation Shanela. They were arrested on charges including possession of unlicensed firearms and ammunition, dacha, and hijacking. Police spokesperson Malesela Letwaba says over 360 undocumented foreign nationals were also arrested.
369 suspects were arrested for contravention of Immigration Act. Drugs such as crystal meth, cocaine, dacha plants, and nyaube were seized. The Provincial Commissioner of Police in Limpopo, Lieutenant General Timbi Hadid, has welcomed the arrest and applauded all law enforcement officers who participated during the operations. The suspects have already started to appear in different magistrate courts around the province.
And a report into one of Britain's worst ever residential fires has blamed dishonest companies and indifferent authorities for the blaze at Grenfell Tower Apartments in 2017. 72 people died in the fire, which spread through cladding trapping residents on the higher floors. The report accused the manufacturers of deliberately concealing the dangers that the highly flammable material posed. More from the BBC's Kate Lamble.
In a detailed final report covering 1,700 pages, the public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire has revealed a path to disaster, beginning in the 1990s. It criticises organisations at every level, including the national government, which set regulations. It says that at times a deregulatory agenda dominated thinking so much that even matters affecting safety were ignored, delayed or disregarded.
The top story at 3 o'clock, Western Cape Social Development says it is ready to assist the victims of a bus crash which killed 10 people in Van Reinsdorp on the west coast earlier this week. For SAFM News, Kimudupima Khalemeli.
In sports this hour, good news for Springbok fans as Kolisi trains with the team and Peter Dupreer wins Team South Africa's third medal at the Paris Paralympics. More details at 3:30.
1 hour for the kids' school run, 8 hours at work, 2 hours preparing meals, and so much more. Sure, 24 hours is simply not enough to do it all. Luckily at UNISA, you don't need to find time for your studies. Anytime will do. Shape your future with the leading open distance e-learning university in Africa. Applications to study undergraduate qualifications at UNISA in 2025 are open. Visit unisa.ac.za to apply. UNISA, define tomorrow.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
What moves the national pulse? It's a question I ask every single day because every day there are different issues that has the impact on the national pulse. It gets your personal pulse rate racing and certainly impacts on the nation and how we feel about the country. And I can tell you now, we'll see how it develops on the day because, as you know, in a 3-hour talk show like this, so much happens. But I can tell you now, the issue of the post office
will move the national pulse, because the story is that the post office has got a month to save itself, or else they will stop delivering, if you get my point. My name's Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the show. This is the National Pulse. You can engage on multiple platforms. You know that. You can tweet right away exactly if you want to tell us where you are listening, as many people are regulars in doing just that. You can also post on Facebook, and if you are tweeting, just tag SFM Radio and myself, Ashraf Garda. Do the same thing on Facebook. And then you can call in 086 000 2032 and then text messages, and you can send a voice note to the WhatsApp number 0614104107. So let me not delay with certainly one of the big issues. The South African Post Office confirmed yesterday that its day zero is approaching fast. They're talking about a month. If they don't get a bailout of sorts, that's it. They will shut down completely, and I mean being liquidated. So we thought, we'll get two takes on this one. But for starters, let's speak to Mark Barnes. Remember, he's interesting because Mark initially was like you and I, who had strong views about the post office, and he wanted to change things, and he put together proposals, and then he was invited to actually join the post office as the CEO, and that didn't last too long. At some stage, Mark Barnes said, that's it. So we'll find out maybe lessons he can share with us to learn from why is the post office where it is right now, and should it be saved, and if so, how? I mean, how do we look at the business model around it? Mark Barnes, then former post office CEO, welcome to the National Pulse. Hi.
Awesome. Good afternoon. Hi. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I certainly can. What do you make of upon hearing this news that the post office is a month to survive, or else?
Well, it seems it's been coming for some time. Okay. I left the post office over 5 years ago now, but all the numbers since then have showed a quite spectacular decay, not explained only by the losses operationally and otherwise that were made, but totally irreconcilable destruction of value. And let me give you two or three pointers. One, when I left there, the net asset value of the post office was 5.2 billion. That is to say, its assets exceeded liabilities by 5.2 billion. It wasn't a couple of years later when it was made known that the liabilities exceeded the assets by 12.5 billion. That's just impossible, given that the operational losses were 2.2 billion or so a year. So there's a huge missing unaccountable number. Mm-hmm. When I left there on the 31st of July 2019, Post Bank had 4.6 billion on deposit with the banks. That's all gone. We had no national treasury guarantees, and we had no request for funding. So something quite extraordinary on a grand scale has happened. Not just operational failure, but systemic failure of a much higher magnitude. So inevitably, this thing was going to die. And my view is that it's very difficult to imagine it being resurrected unless you fundamentally change the definition of its role in South Africa.
Well, I mean, yes, I think that there are two parts to that. One is staying with those missing billions that you refer to. The other is, even if there were no missing billions, which I'll come back to in a moment, right? Yeah. Does the current business model of the post office give you, someone who understands it, the confidence to say it should be saved, or should we really look at something that will replace it completely, something different that will replace it and be better?
Okay. Well, it's common cause that a post office that's just a post office won't survive in a modern technology world, where digitization has taken over and all of these kinds of things. But that was never my definition of the post office. I've got on my desk in front of me the presentation I made to the then Deputy President in 2015 about what I saw the post office as. And those things, most of them, are still valid. And I'll give you a very 1-minute summary. The post office had a commercially irreplaceable footprint, bigger than any retailer, bigger than any bank, and particularly focused on the rural areas. That is commercially irreplaceable. That's the first one. The post office is an organ of state, which is also unique. Okay, and the post office had a bank, not to lend money, to get access to the national payment system, and it had a banking license to take deposits from the public because those were guaranteed by National Treasury. What could you have done with that? What I wanted to do with it was to make a post office a place of trust where South Africans could go for services they otherwise weren't easily able to get in the normal commercial field. And those would range from post, from doing financial transactions, from downloading education, to distributing antiretrovirals, to having approved funeral policies, to having, getting your passport and integrating with the broader state Home Affairs database, because the world, as we've all seen in the last 10 years, is about data and the virtuous or malicious use of that data. And so the post office in that context could play, and still could play, an extraordinary role to the broad population. Now everyone says, well, let it go. Well, that's a possibility, and it's a likely possibility right now. And let the private sector take it over. Well, yeah, sure. Let the couriers and the likes of Postnet do these kinds of things. Those work. But for what percentage of the population do they work? What, 3%, 5%? Who can afford a courier that lives in Mthatha? Nobody.
So therefore you're saying that, in fact, the concept of the post office, however refined, must exist in some form or the other, because it is the only vehicle that will reach the vast majority of South Africans. Many of them are outside the digital spaces, aren't they?
Yeah, and so, I mean, if the post office were to close down, which is likely in my view, then we'd probably be only the second country in the world, I think, other than Guatemala, that doesn't have a post office, okay? So I'm not making this up, okay? Post offices have changed in the same way that computers have changed and telephones have changed and cars have changed. Things change and adapt. They don't become irrelevant. They become relevant in a changed world. And so I would argue that could be the case. And the fundamental point of departure that I had with government was that they wanted to take out the bank. Now, I didn't want to lend money out of the bank. I wanted access to the national payment system so that we could do a service like paying social grants, not to make money, but to provide a service to the people of South Africa. And when we did that, we saved 1.2 billion that was being paid out to the private sector. We saved the Gogos from the destruction of microloans and all of those kinds of things. So for me, the post office is a trusted channel between government and the peoples of South Africa. Then you can start talking about the commercial mix and the subsidy mix that has to make it function, but not if the money just disappears and it does so illegally.
So you're very emphatic that, in fact, there's these missing billions which are unexplainable. I mean, so what would that mean? Corruption? Somebody siphoned it off? What do we say?
Well, there's some obvious things. I mean, the Post Bank could operate without a Reserve Bank oversight because it was guaranteed by National Treasury. It had as a precondition to that guarantee that it took all depositors' money and deposited them with commercial banks and money market instruments. There was 4.6 billion of that when I left. That's gone. They lent it to the post office, apparently. The post office is bankrupt. It's illegal to lend a bankrupt entity money, particularly the depositors' money. The post office itself was selling assets. You can't sell assets when you're not solvent. It's illegal. And so if you went back to the bank accounts of the post office and post bank and so on and said, where did the money go? And reversed by decree those things which were illegal, you'll find a different post office. Now, I'm not saying we were making a profit. We were losing something like just under 100 million a month when I was still there. And we had a strategic approved turnaround plan which had us going to profitability. I'm digging it out now because I've still got it in front of me. We're going to profitability in I'll dig it out in a couple of years' time. Let's just say for now. Okay, and so it was a process, and if we had continued with social grants, there's 200 billion of social grants. You don't have to keep a big percentage of that cash flow to make a profit. We were talking about a net profit in 1920 of some loss of 400 million. Okay, the losses since then have been excess of 2.2 billion. So what I'm saying is, if you properly construct the balance between commercial necessity and developmental mandates, you can construct a completely transparent division between what constitutes state subsidy and what constitutes commercial competitiveness, and then you do it. Yeah,
right. Why has that not happened then? I mean, even in the time that you were there, because you could see it coming.
Well, it did happen in the time that I was there. We had no borrowings, no national treasury guarantees when I left, and we were a functional post office. You can look. All of these things are available. And this is not my opinion, it's the opinion of the Auditor General, it's the opinion of all of the statistics that are tabled at the Portfolio Committee and so on. But I refused to allow the bank out of the post office under my charge, because there isn't a single post office in the world, by the way, that is commercially sustainable without access to the national payment system so that they can participate in the flow of money.
So two things. I mean, assuming it does shut down in a month's time, I mean, what would happen to all those social grant collectors every
Well, they've already been dispersed. They've already been taken over by the private sector in the main, and there's no reason why the private sector can't participate. Take a company like ShopRite. ShopRite pays out social grants. They've got a commercial reason for doing so, which is they want those people in their shops buying things. So I'm happy with that. Some of the banks do it, various outlets. We were just going to be one of them who were doing it gratuitously, not to make money. We were gratuitously providing a safe place where you could go and get your social grants, and where you could leave your social grant in a bank whose motive was not profit.
Okay. Now we understand that the requested bailout within a month is just under 4 billion rands. So should the Treasury deliver?
I can't answer that question about the details. If you said to me, should the Treasury deliver that same sum of money to be managed by the business practitioners and the incumbent management and board, I'd say no. Okay. I mean, the business practitioners, I read somewhere, charging 140 million for their service. That is equivalent to 30 years of a CEO's salary. Help me understand that. Okay. So I don't think it's just more money. I think it's a complete control, alternate, delete thought process about what its role is, how much that will cost, and who's going to lead it.
Why did you leave? What is your official...
I left because they insisted on taking the post bank out of the post office, and that meant I couldn't have access to paid social grants and all of the other various roles, and so I said no. My resignation letter was very clear. That's the only reason I left.
Would you come back if that changes now?
I don't know no matter how good a doctor you are, you can't cure a corpse. I would come back if there was some mandate and it was very clear what was expected of us and what we were going to do, and if we had the freedom to employ the right skills and knowledge base, and if we, in partnership with government and maybe even in partnership with a massive logistics company like Takealot or whoever it might be overseas, could reposition the post office. We can clear customs in the post office, so you could have DHL landing at Tambo, and we could short-circuit all of these processes, get more control. If we could merge the databases, there is a role for a. Let's not call it a post office. There is a role for a massive footprint in South Africa that is an organ of state that can accommodate financial flows and other flows of channels between the state and the peoples of the country.
Okay. And there may well be a role for Mark Barnes, and if it is, it could be a case of the money's in the post. Just think about that. We will certainly follow up on that story as well. Well, there you are, quite fascinating. What do you make about the South African Post Office now in a situation where it is, well, they claim 1 month away, they don't receive 4 billion rands, they will shut down. What do you make of it? You've heard Mark Barnes, I mean, he was part of it before, trying to solve problems. He's in fact saying it has to be a hybrid between the post office as you know it and an organization that does digital transactions, as many are doing already anyway, right? But what do you make of if it has to shut down? Only the second in the world, according to him, to shut down. Any thoughts that should absolutely get your pulses racing? 086 000 2032. This is the National Pulse.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
All right, so any opinions on the post office? Let's hear it from you. And perhaps not just opinions, what about solutions for you? Here's a comment.
Hi, Ashraf. And to your guest there, it's Kali. Ashraf, I think your guest is on the spot, on the nail. I also concur with him that the country without post office, man, is not a country, man. You know, and courier services now can only do for the okay, you know. Those that are laymen and downtrodden can't do, you know. So we must have a post office, advanced post office. Thank you.
Interesting. He was saying when he was around, they had 5 billion rands in the account. They now are of assets. Now they 12 billion down. Something has happened considering they were losing $1 billion a year after that. How do you lose that much of a deficit in such a period of time? Something, according to him, is rather fishy. Right. Further comments about the post office, the model, the current model. Does it work? If you had to give the bailout, what changes would you make? Mark Barnes was suggesting, in fact, there needs to be a complete leadership change of the post office. What do you think? Should we let it just shut down and go and do it elsewhere? Or is there another way to do this? Right. Further comments, Justice in Pretoria. Hi, Justice.
Yes, afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you, Justice. Go ahead. Deliver justice to us. Yeah.
Yes, I want to comment on the issue of post office. The state of post office is deteriorating, as we all know, but there's a solution to any problem. We can't just destroy something completely, but we can offer a solution to the post office by not completely eradicating it, understand? Post office is more like a species that is about to go extinct, you understand, but we can decide as to whether we preserve the species or not, you understand, because we've got the resources to do so. It's not like we are absolutely industrialized or advanced in terms of our civilized society in relation to post office, but we can offer some solutions, technologically speaking, wise to the post office, understand, but my solution to post office is that we shouldn't eradicate it completely. We should just offer a solution, reasonable solution, because not everyone is going to be, or they are technologically inclined, you understand? Because technology, as we all know it, understand? Technology knows no natural or ideological boundaries, understand?
The question is what is a reasonable solution? Thanks for that, Justice. Andila, I'll get to you in just a moment, but what I'll do is let's talk about this. As part of our daily Global Watch feature, the U.S. federal prosecutors have filed criminal charges against 6 senior leaders of Hamas, or Hamas, depends how you pronounce it, citing the deaths of at least 43 American citizens who are among 1,200 people killed on October the 7th. So take a listen to the United States Attorney General Merrick Garland.
Today, the Justice Department unsealed charges against Yahya Sinwar and other senior leaders of Hamas for financing and directing a decades-long campaign to murder American citizens and endanger the security of the United States. As outlined in our complaint, those defendants, armed with weapons, political support, and funding from the government of Iran and support from Hezbollah, have led Hamas's efforts to destroy the state of Israel and murder civilians in support of that aim. In its attacks over the past 3 decades, Hamas has murdered or injured thousands of civilians, including dozens of American citizens. In the early morning hours of October 7th of last year, Hamas, led by these defendants, committed its most violent, large-scale terrorist attack to date. During the attack, Hamas terrorists murdered civilians who tried to flee and those who sought refuge in bomb shelters. They murdered entire families. They murdered the elderly, and they murdered young children. They weaponized sexual violence against women. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists murdered nearly 1,200 people, including over 40 Americans, and kidnapped hundreds of civilians. They perpetrated the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. This weekend, we learned that Hamas murdered 6 more hostages, including Hirsch Goldberg Poland, a 23-year-old Israeli American. We are investigating Hirsch's murder and each and every one of the brutal murders of Americans as acts of terrorism. We will continue to support the whole of government effort to bring the Americans still being held hostage home. The charges unsealed today are just one part of our effort to target every aspect of Hamas's operations. These actions will not be our last. The Justice Department has a long memory. We will pursue the terrorists responsible for murdering Americans and those who illegally provide them with material support for the rest of their lives.
Okay, that's an interesting thought regarding Hamas, regarding how the USA deals with it purely on the basis that these are American citizens that are they say are victims. Any comment on that? In the meantime, there's no question, as I said at the intro of the show, that the post office issue and its future, in my opinion, absolutely moves the national pulse today. Andile, you have a view. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon, Andile. Go ahead. Yeah.
This thing is painful, man. You know, I've got friends who work at the post office who were retrenched, and those thousands of others. This thing, we're not even supposed to be having it. It's said that the post office, we are talking about its future, whereas there's not even a need to even have such conversations because it can survive alone with government departments. Your Department of Home Affairs, all the other departments, they use postal services. They rather opt for private courier services, whereas post office is there. If the state can use post office on its own, the state, all the departments, all the municipalities, if they were to use post office will not even need other private sectors to survive. It will survive alone by state intervention. Then others, like individual users like me, yourself, and other people who use it, it will even get even more funding to sustain itself. One, there is no need for post office to shut down. There is not even a need for us to be discussing post office possibly shutting down.
Okay, but you see, there is a need now. I'm going to move on to the news. There is a need now because now they have no money. They need 4 billion rands to survive just beyond the month. After next month, they need the money. The question is, what happened to it in the first place? And then if they get the money is going to come from Treasury, which means it gets taken away from government coffers. And then do they give it to them and then leave the model as it is? Or do they change the model completely? So, Andile, I mean, that's some of the fundamental questions we need to be asking. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Madupi.
Thank you, Ndate Ashraf, and good afternoon. In your headlines this hour, the SIU has given a damning report about the scale of fraud by lawyers when instituting medical legal claims against the government. Western Cape Social Development says it is ready to assist the victims of a bus crash which killed 10 people in Van Reinsdorp on the west coast earlier this week. And music legend and producer Sello Chico Twala's son, Longwe Twala, will remain in custody until the 12th of this month. Details of these and other stories coming up 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Allendale Road eastbound in Midrand has delays towards Alsatian Road. In Pretoria, Iskempa-Clearly Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street, and Solomon Mhlangu Drive eastbound slow moving at Delphi Avenue. In KZN, the N3 eastbound in Camperdown has a stationary truck after Linfield Park exit. The M7 eastbound has queuing trucks reported towards South Coast Road. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. Ngeni Road westbound slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. Main Road southbound in Observatory is slow moving at Anzia Road, and Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Right, to me, the men, what did I call him? Someone who has this high emotional IQ, who plays this game of, this violent game of rugby. Is he available this week?
Well, listen, we are yet to find out. However, some good news with the fact that he trained with his teammates this morning in Cape Town. This is Springbok captain Siya Kolisi. Remember, Kolisi suffered a facial fracture, and the Boks had said that they would monitor him and see if he will be fit in time for when the final squad is announced tomorrow. They face New Zealand on Saturday in their rugby championship match, and the team will be announced tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So we wait and see if he'll be part of the team, but things are definitely looking good. Then, in the midst of a growing legal storm involving professional and amateur rugby players taking action against World Rugby, the Rugby Federation Union and the World Rugby Union, there's a groundbreaking study that has found that there's no evidence that concussions in amateur sports leads to long-term cognitive decline. Now, a collaborative study conducted by UNSW Sydney, the University of Oxford and Harvard University have revealed that amateur athletes who suffered concussions across various sports often demonstrated better cognitive function than those who have never experienced a concussion. And this study involved more than 15,000 participants between the age of 50 and 90 as part of an ongoing NHS-backed investigation into brain aging and cognitive decline, which is very interesting. But moving on to Paralympics, hand cyclist Peter du Preez has won South Africa's third medal at the Paralympics in Paris, taking bronze in the men's H1 individual time trial this morning. He finished the 14.1 kilometer course in 36 minutes, finishing behind Italian Fabrizio and Maxine Hordes of Belgium. Then in football, Tim Bazwani will take over the captain armband of Bafana Bafana's upcoming 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. Zwane comes in for Ronan Williams, who's recovering from a shoulder surgery. Now, Bafana's first qualifier match is against Uganda at home at Orlando Stadium on Friday, and then away to South Sudan on the 10th of September, which is next week, Tuesday. Meanwhile, the first round of the 2024-25 UEFA Nations League will start tomorrow as Spain start their title defense against Serbia. France face Italy, and Germany locks horns with Hungary. And in terms of the competition, there's 54 teams competing, divided into 4 leagues, with each team playing 6 matches in the groups, and then teams finishing third in League A and second in League B will face off in relegation promotion playoffs, with the identical playoffs between League B and C, and then the 12 group winners in a European qualifying will go to the World Cup. Moving on to cricket, a new look Australia T20 squad is set to play a 3-match series against Scotland, and all the 3 matches will be played at the ground in Edinburgh. The Mitch Marsh-led squad is missing the big 3 fast bowlers, Pat Cummins, Mitch Starc and Josh Hazlewood, and their spots are being taken by Nathan Ellis, Riley Meredith and Aaron Hardy. Then in tennis, Jack Draper says that he is thrilled to become the first British man to reach the US Open quarterfinals since his friend and mentor Andy Murray in 2016 after beating Thomas Matic in straight sets on Monday. Draper has yet to drop a set or service game at the tournament, and he faces Alex de Minaur for a place in the semi-finals tonight.
Incredibly proud of that achievement. Obviously it's one of the biggest tournaments in the world. And to follow in Andy's footsteps and make the quarterfinals here since he did in 2016, it's a big achievement for me. But I think I've just got to keep on going, because I know there's still room for improvement and still room to hopefully go further in the tournament.
That is the sports for now.
What do you with the AFCON in terms of the format? What's it like this time around? Because it often changes, right, from group to knockout to. If we're not very clear, we can find out just now, because I'm always confused about it.
In terms of the AFCON qualifiers?
Yeah, the South African, they're part of AFCON, right? Because there's more teams now than before. I know that compared to before here.
Absolutely. We just know that they are starting this weekend in terms of the qualifiers. Are you looking at how or the groups that they're going to be playing?
Yeah,
or
South Africa's in the group, and then what happens to them? Yeah.
Yes, obviously we're looking at them doing well from these 2 games that they're going to be playing. They're looking to get those 6 points in just so that we can see them qualifying even more. We're yet to find out as time goes on in terms of how that is going to work out for them.
Okay, well, let's see what happens. They absolutely need to be in that AFCON 9. What were they in the final last time? After missing out for so many years. More sports in an hour.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Bafana are taking on Uganda at Orlando Stadium on Friday, 6 September 2024 at 6 p.m. This AFCON 2025 qualifier is the beginning of a journey to improve on the bronze medal from 2023. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets are available at Ticket Pro. 60 Rand for adults, 30 Rand for children under 12, scholars in uniform and students with student cards. A family ticket at 140 Rand allows 2 adults and 2 children. Come dressed in support of Bafana to win prizes. If you are not at the stadium, catch the game on SABC3 at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so I know many people still want to talk about the post office, and we will talk about the post office, I can assure you of that, because I'm really interested in where do we find the solutions around the broader issues about the post office. It's a big concern, okay? So to call in, it's 086 000 2032, and then voice notes 0614 104 107. Let me remind you that same number you can use to join the National Pulse WhatsApp channel. Just say join channel. Text messages are also welcome. Let's now talk about something that's, well, it's horrific in terms of what's happened, but there's a specific angle around it we need to talk about. The trade union GIWUSA, that's GIWUSA, they've condemned the brutal killing of 2 women in Limpopo. You probably know the story. They were brutally killed by farmers and allegedly fed them after that to the pigs. Well, the union, they say that the murder exposes the cruel logic of capitalism where profits are prioritized over people's needs. So let's try and understand what is meant by just that with Mametlewi Sibai, who is the president of the General Industry Workers Union of South Africa, which I've just given her the acronym GIWUSA. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
The pleasure is mine, and greeting to you and to your listeners.
Thank you. Right, so you have a position. I mean, first of all, what is your understanding about what happened? And I'm very interested in how you're linking it up to capitalism.
This is a cruel murder that is clearly racially motivated by, 2 farmers primarily, and of course, they seem to have enlisted the services of one of their farm workers, but of course, targeting an extremely disparate and poor women, 2 women accompanied by a man who was, who survived, for scavenging for food that was dumped on their farm as a waste food to feed basically the pigs. Now, it highlights the problem at many levels. The continuation of the crude and ruthless bloody racism of the white farmers 30 years into a black majority government, that the cruel murder like this could take place, that our people can be not only thought to be disposable, but fed to pigs in a most degrading manner in which it was, in addition to the credit of the murder itself, that our people could be going to dump sites to scavenge for food in the most industrialized country in in the whole African continent, all of those things are a problem.
Okay, how I just need to understand the broader picture here. How, and I'm still saying this, what is your understanding of why were they then killed in the first place?
Well, I mean, the issue is that obviously they would say is, a flagrant disregard of the property rights. I'm just imagining that is how the farmers would defend themselves, right? That they actually trespassed into the farm. The question that should be obvious to all of us is, would they have acted the same way if it was white people having trespassed into the farm? Because most of those farms in Limpopo, by the way, I know them, they're actually not even fenced in that sense. But you kill people just for working on your farm in a country, for that matter, where most of the land is privately owned and that ownership is monopolized by the tiny elite of people that have monopoly over the most fertile agricultural land. Where do people, are you saying that every time that you see a person who's not supposed to be on your farm, you kill them? I think that's a problem.
But you see, isn't this
reflect the racism?
But isn't this the issue? Isn't this the issue that what has happened is absolutely wrong, right? But there are examples of farmers, let's say predominantly white farmers, because the majority of farms are owned by white farmers, who've actually killed their workers, for example. But there are also examples of workers and others and robbers in communities who've attacked farms. What I'm trying to understand is the issues of violence and crime. It sort of swings both ways. How then do we link it to a very clear plan that you suggest, which is, it's clear around exploitation and the issues of capitalism and racism? How do we know that when there are so many examples both ways?
Well, it is very clear what has happened here in terms of the humanization that has taken place. Firstly, these were clearly people that were there to scavenge for food. I don't think it takes a rocket science for a person to look at the fact that you couldn't have confused people, two poor, disparate women and a one man, as a potential criminals that were life-threatening in any manner. Secondly, the treatment of, even if you to assume that it was a mistake, the fact that they are left disposed and left to be fed by the pigs like a garbage, right? That cannot have been a mistake. And that tells you about the humanization that has taken place. And that speaks to the broader problems of the continuation of racism in this country. But I also want to settle on the issue that we've got to ask ourselves, how do we have a situation wherein our people are living off the dump sites where they are risking not only their lives, as is evident in this case, but also their health? In a country where, 10 million tons of food goes to waste, mainly wasted by a big corporations across the food supply chain.
Well, I mean, wouldn't that last part?
Million people in this country are going to bed hungry. That is also the question that we've got to be able to ask.
Well, I mean, you see, you're right, but wouldn't that's the latter part that you made? Isn't it a question for all of South Africa? Not about white South Africans, not about capitalists. It's a question for the people of South Africa, for government. How did we allow ourselves into a position where there are so many people starving and there's so much food being wasted?
It is a question for the capitalist class, because this is the issue here. The issue is that the country is producing more than we need, right? That is the reason that you have 14 million people starving, hungry on the one pole. On the other pole, you have 60 million tons of food equivalent to 60 billion worth of rent going to waste and be lost, right? And who does the losses? It is because, and there are three areas. One is that 20 to 30% is said to be lost by, cooperation within the agricultural sector and other things. 30 to 40% by the retail businesses and other things and so on. And 5 to 10% on the level of consumption. Now, let's just analyze that, right? How is it that big manufacturers of food and retail are losing business while people are in need of business? It is because production of food from farming to manufacturing and, of course, retail is taking place not to meet the food requirements of ordinary people who are studying in this country. It is there for profit. So you are living in a system where actually it is preferable for big cooperation to dump that mass amount of food in waste than to feed people who actually need it. If they were to feed people who actually need it and they don't have the money, it will undermine the logic of profit. So rather you have them starve to death than actually be able to feed them at the same time as you're throwing that amount of food. And this is all the amount of food we need to abolish starvation in this country. And there are solutions in a number of countries.
Well, I mean, I hear you.
A free food banks which distribute food that is at risk of loss and waste free to the people that are in desperate need and can't afford to be able to buy.
I mean, I hear you. I think the point, and we've sort of suggested as well, what you've mentioned is a problem, but there are also other issues. There are many examples of violence and inhumanity committed by people of the same races, whoever they may be. There are, for everyone with white people, there's also examples of black people doing the same thing to each other, right? So there's ample examples of inhumanity, and that clearly must change. And, you know, that point about where is the social justice in what we do, well, I'm completely on side regarding that. But let me just leave you with this one last thought as we wrap up. You have a list of demands, I understand, but just a short reply. Give me your one paramount demand that you've made.
What do you need? Make sure that you bring the key monopolies within the supply chains and the public ownership to ensure that food is fairly and equitably distributed, prices are regulated so that food is affordable, the land is redistributed so that not only is it monopolized by a big corporations, but actually it's available in order that everybody can be able to produce food as it used to happen before, in order to broaden the base of production, but also a fair distribution to resolve the deepening crisis of hunger. Lastly, is a question that we need universal basic income grant so that nobody has to scavenge for food. We can be able to afford that to ensure that at least everybody has a secure amount of food, a secure amount of income linked to an upper bound or lower bound of a food poverty. So that we eliminate that, nobody goes to bed hungry in this country.
All right.
We can afford it.
We're going to leave it at that. Mametiwe Sebai, President of the the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Giwusa, appreciate you giving up your time here on the National Pulse. What do you make of that?
Hey, Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
You know, since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Amatax ladies target all 3 essential points to climb up the ladder, but the ladies from eThekwini plan to demonstrate a sense of urgency to move from the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Durban Ladies FC on Saturday, 7 September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, that conversation I had regarding the 2 women killed and then left to die and be, bitten into by pigs. What do you make of that conversation in particular? What comes to that? There were so many layers out of that, and I'd like you to contribute to that via sending us a voice note 0614 104 107 or to call in 086 000 2032. Now, if that in many ways reflects a divide, what about the digital divide or the technological divide? It's such a big issue in the country and around the world. So this conversation is important. Yashin Pillay talks to us now about South Africa's Chemical Industries Education and Training Authority, which is CHIETA, that's the acronym. They're taking the Smart Skills Centre to rural parts of the country. So what is the Smart Skills Centre? What sort of a game changer. Is that how does it expand what's going to happen next? Yasin Pillay, CEO of Chiata, good chatting to you and to connect with us on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf, and a great pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. It's been a long, long time since we've last spoken, but a lot has happened since then. We've all changed positions, right? Let's talk about the changing of positions regarding technological advancement, in this case, to what you talk about, these smart platforms. I mean, they're that important to rural communities. Tell me about it.
So we've, in terms of our whole objective, not just to be a SETA that works, but to be a SETA that makes an impact, we've launched what we refer to as smart skill centers. And what these are is they're actually spaces that provide skills development, training, and other opportunities in a digitized format through ensuring that we access, or that rural communities access 4IR technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, gaming, etc. And the main reason why we think this is so important is because, as you mentioned, we have a rising digital divide in the country, especially a digital skills divide between urban and rural communities. And so, as much as we want to talk about the fourth industrial revolution, many of our rural communities lack access not just to the internet, but to digital technologies. In fact, some of the latest data from Stats SA indicating that just over 13% of rural households have access to the internet, and less than 1%, in fact, have access to digital technology. So many people have never used 4IR or digital technologies before, and yet, we are speaking about this fourth industrial revolution, but we've got this digital divide, which is really refers to the unequal access to digital technology. So these spaces that we've established 6 of them currently in 6 provinces, with 3 more to come in the remainder of the provinces being Northern Cape, Gauteng and Limpopo. The aim really is to bridge this digital divide in the country.
Absolutely. So that means if you already had it in 6 regions, you already can see the impact, right? What impact has it had?
Well, we've been able to support 12,653 rural community members with some form of support in either accessing a new skill or accessing a new opportunity. So, for example, these 12,600 people who have accessed our 6 smart skill centers. We have one in the Western Cape, in Saldanha Bay. We have one in the rural community of Babanango in KZN, at the PETVET College in the Eastern Cape. We also have in Brits in the Northwest, in Mojaji's Kloof in Limpopo, and in Highveld in Mpumalanga. And what they've really done is to ensure that we have these more than 12,000 or so beneficiaries who are able to access either a private internet training pod to either book or use for accessing free digital courses, or simply to apply for a job or an internship or an apprenticeship, or take an online job interview, print a CV, and access the free data, firstly, that's available. Or, for example, access some of our virtual reality training so that you get to experience what it's like to be trained as a welder using virtual reality, and you don't suffer from a sort of technology shock, which leads to technology resistance in the workplace. We've also run a number of coding and robotics classes. We offer accredited Microsoft courses for one to be skilled as a data scientist, for example. And we also offer virtual reality for training at heights, for dealing with hazards, and various other types of skills. So through these smart skill centers, we've seen that we've been able to skill in some form or the other more than 12,600 people in the last few months, that being about 5 to 6 months.
And that's quite significant. So again, someone listening right now, I mean, you'd have 2 types. One would be a person who'd want to be part of those smart skill centers, but the other would be someone who's let's say in business, an entrepreneur who's in the technological spaces. And is there a way for them on both levels to tap into what you're doing and to tap into your resources to partner with you?
No, absolutely, Ashraf. And, our goal really is to ensure that we have a smart skill center on every corner of every street in every community. And in this way, we will be able to bridge this digital skills divide, improve those percentages to reduce that 13 or so percent to a minimal percentage, and therefore have greater outcomes when you have a more digitally literate, cyber literate, data literate population. And the only way we can do this, because we have limited resources as Chieta or the chemical SETA, and because we simply do not have, as a one state entity, the capabilities to roll out a smart skill center in every community, collaboration is really the key to our success, and really to keep rolling out these centers. So what we've done is we've opened up the opportunities. Our goal was to have 9 centers, one in every province, by 2025. And post this, we are looking to collaborate not only with private sector companies. So, for example, PG Glass, one of our largest surface, glass producing manufacturing companies in the country. We have collaborated with them to open the Gauteng Smart Skill Center at their facility in Springs, which will be open to the public as well. And this is an example of a private-public sector collaboration to expand our smart skill centers. The Highveld Business Park in Mpumalanga, we have collaborated with them as well. And so where there are opportunities, not only for chemical companies such as PG Glass, as I've mentioned, or others, we do have plans post-2025 to have more of these smart skill centers. And again, it's not only with the private sector. Just recently with our sister SETA, the services SETA, we have agreed that Mkuze in KZN, which has a services SETA skill center, we will be disrupting that center by converting it into a smart skill center so that the communities around Mkuze, through a joint SETA collaboration, will equally have.
All sounds very exciting. Give me a contact number, website, perhaps I can direct people to.
You can contact us through our website, www.chieta.org.za, or info@chieta, again also available on our website, and we use these as our contact details, where we can guide you through the process of collaborating with us on our Smart Skill Center.
I have a sense many people will connect with you, Yashin Pillay. Thank you for your time. And best wishes as you roll out from 0 to 6 and 6 to 9. CEO of Chieta, spelled CHIETA, and as I said, chieta.co.org. I think. Well, just go Chieta. You'll get it. You'll Google it. You'll find it right away. Okay, let's do this. Lots of further thoughts on one of the biggest issues we've had, which is around the post office.
You know, regardless of all the complexities of restructuring and whatnot, we just need to begin with just simple things, man. A post office that is very well managed. I mean, ever since I started using a post office, there's always one window offering services to the public. The rest, you see all these empty windows. On the other hand, the very same government was to tell us about gross unemployment, or subject us rather to gross unemployment. Whereas all of these post offices, there's always one person doing service there, giving out service. So I understand very much the assertion by the expert that we need restructuring that is going to be friendly to the type of modern economics. However, management to begin with, we need people to be serving us. Zola to speaks in Bombela.
Well, there you are. I think you're right. As has been amplified already, you can't have money with the same management. It's like having an underperforming rugby team and you still keep the same coach and the manager. You just can't do that. And then they need to understand the terrain has changed and they need to play in a different sort of space, right? Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The top stories at 4, a damning SIU report on medical legal claims and calls for a woman to lead the African Development Bank. A very good afternoon. The SIU has given a damning report about the scale of fraud by lawyers when instituting medical legal claims against the government. This includes lawyers using the same method in the private healthcare industry. The SIU was briefing Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA. It says it has managed to recoup more than 3 billion rand from these fraudulent claims. The head of the SIU, Andy Mutibi, says in some instances there was collusion among lawyers, doctors, nurses, and the Office of the Attorney General.
Still on the general observations, the evidence that we have gathered really points to collusion. And this is the collusion is really quite widespread. Collusion between attorneys, collusion between nurses and doctors, both in the private and public healthcare. So, some of the examples we've seen is that nurses would steal medical records and illegally handed them over to the attorneys.
Western Cape Social Development says it is ready to assist the victims of a bus crash which killed 10 people in Van Reinsdorp on the west coast earlier this week. Police have opened a case of culpable homicide following the deaths of the construction workers. The bus was travelling from the Northern Cape to Ceres when it plunged down the Van Reins Pass. Western Cape Social Development Minister Jaco Lund.
In the aftermath of this tragic crash, staff from the Western Cape Department of Social Development were immediately activated to assess whether there was a need for psychosocial support services. We will work with the SAPS and the Department of Health and Wellness to render support such as trauma debriefing should it be required. Since many of the affected are from the Northern Cape, we are liaising with DSD colleagues in that province who will also continue to provide support services to the victims and their families.
Music legend and producer Sello Chico Twala's son, Longwe Twala, will remain in custody until the 12th of this month. The case has been postponed to allow investigators to verify his residential address and confirm his legal aid representation. Chico Twala opened a case of robbery and theft against his sons, Sello and Longwe, at the Douglasdale police station. Sello appeared briefly in the Randburg Magistrates Court where his matter was dismissed due to insufficient evidence. Chico accused his sons of stealing a studio equipment at his home in Fourways while he was out of the country. More than 50 shacks and a number of incomplete houses have been demolished in Moshawane, outside Mahikeng in the northwest. The operation, led by the sheriff of the court, comes after a number of government entities approached the court to evict those who had reportedly illegally erected shacks and constructed houses. A community resident, Tisetso Mache, however, says they bought the land from the traditional leader in that area.
I'm not briefed about this because I think as the resident of this village, we should have been noticed about what is going to happen on this land because we've been on this land for more than 3 years now, and no one has ever came to us telling us this land is under certain department. But now we've been given this court order today saying this it has been issued on 31st January 2024, which has been given to the leaders and the chiefs. Those are saying they are the owner of this land. Maybe they've been claiming, which is not true according to the sheriff has indicated.
And Human Settlements Minister Mamuluko Kubai says South Africa has recommended a woman candidate for the position of President of the African Development Bank. She says Swazi Shabalala, who is the bank's vice president, should be considered to lead the institution. Kubai, who is accompanying the president to the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit in Beijing, says Shabalala has vast experience in the financial sector.
The current deputy in the African Development Bank, Swazi, is a South African black woman who has been very excellent in her work, what she's been doing there. She is in the running for becoming the leader, the president of the African Development Bank, and I hope we can all rally behind her and support her. As you have seen the statement by Cabinet to say we remain as a candidate. We do believe that it's actually fair to see equity in the continent, women leading entities, but also being able to continue because she's deputy, she's number 2, she's been there, she's competent. It's not just about a black woman.
The top story at 4 o'clock, the SIU has given a damning report about the scale of fraud by lawyers when instituting medical legal claims against the government. For SAFM News,
in sports, the Saurampadi and Sitole become the first South Africans to win a medal in wheelchair tennis, and Ugandan marathon runner Cheptegei hospitalized after being dosed with petrol and satellite. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg, slow moving towards Crown Interchange, and SKM Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Mood Street. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a crash before the M13 Paradise Valley Interchange. The M7 eastbound is queuing trucks reported towards South Coast Road. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the M4 northbound has a pedestrian crash reported after Sandile Tuzi Road. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound queuing towards Voortrekker Road. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 northbound slow moving towards Kuburg Interchange. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg Interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Omar G.
The Mediterranean Knights are after the big prize, a win in the opener of the AFCON qualifier. But Amavubi differs and insists on travelling back home with a massive bag of 3 points. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Libya versus Rwanda on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, what for you moves the National Pulse today? It's certainly been the Post Office to a large degree and the first hour of the 3-hour The National Pulse, but you can have your own opinions about what is it that moves the National Pulse. To call in 086 000 2032. You can send us a voice note 0614 104 107. My name is Ashraf Garda. Great that you're a part of the show. By the way, before we chat to Sophie McQueen in just a moment, here's a thought that I've had. So, when you're traveling, like Sophie is now, but many others, do you still carry a business card? Or even at normal functions in South Africa, do you carry a business card? Or do you find it's now sufficient to have your number saved digitally that you can then share either via a WhatsApp or, you can airdrop it depending on which format you're using to another person? That means, are business cards still that important? I'm battling with it because I don't really know which way to go, okay? But if you have an opinion, do share that with me. I'd like to know. Right, let's talk about what's happening in China and South Africa. China, you are aware, we've been covering the story. President Ramaphosa and his team, they've been part of a summit in China. And today, Ramaphosa, the president that is, addressed the forum on the China-Africa Cooperation Summit and touched on South Africa's economy, as well as this journey now of the 7th administration. There are some key issues we want to cover. With me is the SABC International News Editor, Sophie McQueen. Sophie, good chatting to you. Thanks for connecting to us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf.
Thank you. Right. So let's talk about the President's presentation first up. I mean, some key points you'd like to make from that?
I think the admission that the economy is not growing well, the admission that South Africa has a huge challenge of inequality, the fact that South Africa needs partners globally, particularly China, to assist in terms of creating jobs. If the economy is growing and you have industries, particularly new industries, but also in terms of South Africa and China relations, the president talking about him and President Xi Jinping discussing the issue of the trade deficit or the gap between South Africa and China in relation to the trade relationship, and also him talking about what kind of issues that the two countries want to pay attention on. And South Africa would be infrastructure, will be the power and agriculture, but not forgetting soft power, that is culture, that brings together the people. And therefore, for me, those were the critical issues. But the president admitting that South Africa has got a serious challenge of inequality.
Well, I mean, you're right. It's good that he admitted it. What was the response? I mean, any idea? And I know things get translated. Any responses from what the president said?
Well, clearly the business community from China, because he was addressing the business forum. These are captains of industries between China and South Africa. They are willing to invest in South Africa, but there are issues that need to be attended to. For example, issues of visas. You have a short stay in South Africa when you get a visa, and therefore if you really want to build perhaps investment, you need more time to be in the country, to look at different areas and capacities. The second issue is the issue of tariffs. The South African group, I spoke to Gloria Serobe, who pointed that particularly in relation to agriculture, the tariffs does affect the issue of export to China. But on the other hand, you have the Minister of Trade and Industry, Hackstow, saying that if you want a waiver, you must be careful of what you are asking for, because the Chinese are going to come back and say, we also want a waiver in relation to the tariffs when we send our goods to South Africa. And therefore, because they are a bigger economy, they will end up flooding your markets and your local production going bankrupt. And therefore, you have to strike a balance. So I think those were the response. But you can see there's an appetite, both sides, to invest, but South Africa in particular to send or to sell or export goods to China. On another issue, South Africa wants a better deal. They don't want to send raw materials anymore. They want the industrialization to happen in South Africa, the beneficiation, so that you can get a better value addition.
Well, that makes sense. I've spoken about it yesterday. Build local, then sell global, as opposed to, sell off exactly what you're saying, the raw materials, sell them out and then buy them back at a much higher price. Doesn't work. Yesterday, when we didn't talk to you, we were going to talk about renewable projects and electric cars. Right? What came out of that?
It's a hybrid model. You have new cars that are being put together here in China, and those cars, they have a hybrid system where you can use a battery to a certain point, for example, 400 kilometers. If you need to boost the battery, you then use the fuel as you would do. But in terms of how the engine is being constructed, you have technology that assists in avoiding the high emission. And therefore, this is a new model, and they are saying that they are going to launch this new model in South Africa in 2025, but they have done that here in China. And therefore, you can see in the streets, the cars that have got the green plates are all cars that are classified as complying with issues of green gas emissions.
Okay.
And then you have the blue, it's still old system. And therefore you can see that China is a real leader in terms of renewables. And it's no surprise that now countries such as America and the European Union are now imposing high tariffs for when their countries are importing cars from China, particularly the hybrid model.
Okay, how interesting. What happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow it's the official opening by President Xi Jinping. And of course, leaders from the continent will also make short statements in terms of how they see this relationship. And I think the main issue that's going to come out is that let the relationship be a relationship of equals. But secondly, the issue of raw materials is going to dominate again in terms of ensuring that, yes, China, come help us so that we can manufacture this technology because you are using our raw material to keep up with the new industrialization that is dependent on knowledge and technology.
Well, there are raw materials, and I think the issue of those balance of payments you referred to earlier, and how can that get narrowed? Well, Sophie, it's always good chatting to you. Enjoy the rest of your very, very busy working trip in China. We may well talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for your time.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
I asked a question about business cards, and I'll put it to you again if you missed it. I said, do you now still have if you're traveling, well, not just abroad, but even at conferences in South Africa, do you still carry a business card, or do you find now that you have a digital card on your mobile or smartphone, and that can be easily shared, via WhatsApp or an AirDrop, or whichever way, different Bluetooth as well, of course. All those ways can allow for data transfer and information to another person. Which one are you using? I can tell you now, I haven't had a business card made for a while, and I'm contemplating whether I still need to do one or not. And therefore, my question to you. Here's a question, Ashraf, or rather Mr. Garda. No, don't call me Mr. Garda, just Ashraf. Ashraf's fine. A business card is more of a statement. It is easily accessible, and it is tangible. It validates its purpose as it is available during, and one has no data or power. One cannot use the net due to load shedding. But remember, the business card will get onto phones. It's not just about using it on an internet. So even if it's temporary, you'll get it very, very quickly, because we don't have load shedding forever. We know that, right? Okay, further comments. Errol has a comment on the post office. Hi, Errol. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, how's it, Errol?
Yeah, right. Okay, man. I worked for the post office for quite a long time. I came from the private sector, and I worked there as an accountant. One of those days, the post office was a well-run entity, and it even showed a profit. But after I left, through mismanagement, corruption, fraud, it gradually went down to what it is today. And, even these days, the CEO of the post office is earning over $1 million a year, as bad as the post office is. So, it was a well-run entity. But
well, not clearly not. Clearly not anymore, right? And we know that. Yeah. All right.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Eric. Eric, I tell you what, has anybody worked at the post office? Like Eric's example, has anybody worked at the post office and working for them now, or worked before? And what are your experiences like? And what do you feel about talk of an imminent closure, like 1 month to close, if they don't get 4 billion rands? How do you feel about it? I'm really talking about internalizing it. What do you make of it, right? Well, we do have many post office calls.
The post office is such an unfortunate situation that's taking place there at that particular SOE. However, I concur with Mark Bonds. It's clear that we do need a change of leadership within the post office management, and it's time that the ANC does not prioritize cadre deployment individuals, rather focuses more on the expertise and people that are good for the job. Daniel here in Bryanston.
Okay, well there you are. So confirming rather the views of many other people as well, right? Here's something around the global issues we've covered.
Yo, Ashraf, these bullies, they are something else. America saying that and calling other people and accusing other people, that's just ironic. They can't. They are not in any position to say those things because they themselves are even worse than the Hamas. This is TP Western Cape.
Okay, that of course in response to news that the Americans are taking up the issue of Hamas, particularly because of their American citizens. So they're charging 6 senior leaders of Hamas. Here's another one.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and SAFM listeners. No, I don't know about Hamas attacking Americans. The last time I know about Americans being attacked by these people was when bin Laden was still alive. I don't support Hamas. Yes, I don't like what they did last year, but I'm beginning to be cautious about what these Americans are saying. Looks more like disinformation and counter-terrorist strategies here. Thanks, Lionel Woodbank.
Thanks for that, Lionel. Well, my understanding, look, the bigger issue is who funds Israel in terms of their position regarding the Middle East. That's the one part. In the very literal, narrow sense of what's happened now, the American position that you just alluded to, Lionel, is the fact that they're saying 6 citizens of the USA, rather 43 American, let me get that right, 43 of the American citizens were among 1,200 people killed in total. So in response to that, therefore they're charging some of the Hamas leaders. Right, William in Cape Town, hi.
Hello, Ashraf. Thank you for this opportunity. I worked for the post office. I started in 1987, 88. I was about 18 years old. When I was 24 years old, I could buy me a house. When I was 53, the house was finished paid. And I don't understand. I had a pension fund. I had a medical aid subsidy, a pension fund, everything. And I don't understand how the post office, I was a postman. And it was a good job, and there was also discipline. They can say, what about the Boer? Really, there was discipline there. By the way, they checked your shoes must shine. You must have your tie on. You must be nice. You must have your cap. You must look decent. But lately, I see the postman. It doesn't even look like the postman anymore. And we were disciplined.
And the postman always rings twice, so clearly that's not happening any longer.
Yeah.
Right? Well,
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Okay, yeah, things have changed. I mean, we know that. Absolutely, okay. Here's another comment. Janus has a comment on the farms too. Janus, hi.
Actually, I would like to have a comment. Hi. Listen, I would like to have a comment about, because you had an interview from somebody who criticized the capitalist state, capitalist system.
Yeah.
I came from the communist system. I can tell you, the people, they had to be careful what they wish for, because, we were struggling. Everything was controlled by the government. The agriculture, all the industry was controlled. We had to wait for hours to buy a bread. The salary was very poor. Everybody suffered of the system. So they should look at it more carefully what they wish for. My question is, if such a system, such a beautiful system is existing there, why so many Cubans and Venezuelans and others are trying to go to this wild,
Okay, well, maybe another conversation on the overall issue of capitalism, socialism, and a combination of the two in any other system that needs to work, because I don't think there are many examples of socialist systems failing, and there are certainly examples of capitalist systems failing. In fact, South Africa broadly is a capitalist society, and therefore the inequality exists, and that has to change as well. So it's pretty complex. We need to have that conversation. Janus, thanks for that, right? Okay, further comments. We have another call from Anonymous in Craddock. Anonymous, hi.
Hi, how are you, Ashraf?
Yeah, good talking to you. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, Ashraf, I just want to comment about this, what Americans say today.
Yeah.
No one can trust America. America, they have been lying. First, I want to tell you, there is professors who wrote, professor wrote the book now about September 11. They mentioned about September 11, they lied. Then it comes about the Israeli issues. Everybody knows, even American knows. On 7th October, Israelis killed their own people. They lied that.
No, but I don't think that's all. Let's put it this way. I must just say that issue is complex. There are examples of Hamas attacking citizens, Israelis. Then there are also counter stories of some Israelis, soldiers killing their own people, whether it's in a form of defense or attack. It's complicated. But to say that all were killed by Hamas only is also incorrect. And all were killed by the Israelis is also incorrect.
I mean, when it comes to the Hamas or whatever the Israelis are saying, it's all incorrect, because there was an evidence now to say that they lied that the Hamas killed the children. It was all fabricated, and it was also mentioned that. Two, recently there was one of the hostages was released from Japan. She, the Israeli government, particularly Netanyahu, came and said she was abused, she was arrested. She came on the social media and said clearly, no, whatever the Israelis said, it's all lie. That's why even the Israelis, they're very, very upset against their own government. These people, they'll never stop lying. We are just tired with the lying. Okay. Another example I want to give you.
I need to move on. I mean, I can't get three comments really. I need to move on. Thank you for that. I mean, ideally, if you call in to give others a chance as well, make one solid comment, which you certainly can do. Well, look, that issue is complex, not so much in terms of the human rights issue. The issue is complex in terms of, this is my point, so you can get clarity. The issue of the information that comes out of what is called Israel and Palestine, I have difficulty understanding it every single day. That's why I will never just repost and retweet people's things. It is just so complex. And there's a statement, there's a denial, there's a counter statement. It's crazy. It's very difficult to understand. What we do know right now is there are people within Israel who are protesting against the Israeli government because they say that their stance of not negotiating has cost the hostages them lives in terms of their families who are hostages. That I've known. It doesn't mean they support the Palestinian position. It certainly means they want their families alive. Mohammed in Durban. Go ahead, Mohammed. Mohammed, hi.
Hi, Ashraf.
Yeah, you're live. Go ahead.
Hi, Ashraf. My comment about the Hamas situation and the U.S. situation is, firstly, I think America is a puppet for the Israelis. Secondly, what I want to say is that all the healthcare workers and staff of UNRWA that have been killed by the Israeli Defense Force, or I should say the Israeli terrorist force, why doesn't America charge them for killing of the American citizens who are journalists, who are healthcare workers, and who are members of United Nations and UNRWA?
Okay.
Isn't that hypocritical?
Well, I mean, I've just made the point. I think that entire issue is not complicated in terms of the issues of fundamental human rights. It's complicated in terms of the tit for tat that's going on now that makes it incredibly difficult to really understand what happens next. So, Mohammed, thanks for that call. I think one day we'll have many books, not just one book, many books on this issue. And I can tell you now, it is an issue that has many different angles to it, and we need to understand it. But at its core is something I've spoken about it often, that the issue of Israel and Palestine started at least with the Balfour Declaration. That really is the sum cause of so many other layers of problems that have occurred since then. So if we truly want peace and justice, which I would want, and I'm sure you would want it too, all over the world, then you have to go into the causes that prevent not just peace, but justice, because you can't really have sustained justice you can't have peace without justice. The justice must come first. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Kholofelo.
A very good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Mudupima Khalimele with the headlines. Coming up at 5, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says the state of the country's crime intelligence is extremely worrying. The SIU has given a damning report about the scale of fraud by lawyers when instituting medical legal claims against the government, and dozens of people are reported to have been killed in northeastern Nigeria when militants attacked a village there. Details with Greg coming up at 5.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Randburg is slow moving towards Malibongwe Drive. The N3 northbound in Bedfordview queuing on the link to the N12 east at Gilulis interchange. The M1 southbound is slow moving through Crown interchange towards Boysons, and on the N1 in Pretoria, a veld fire reported with smoke affecting visibility between Garsfontein Road and Rigel Avenue, so please reduce your speeds and drive with absolute care. In KZN, the M7 eastbound has queuing trucks reported towards South Coast Road. The N2 southbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N2 northbound has a stationary vehicle after Sibaya Drive exit. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound slow moving towards Racecourse Road. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange, and the N7 Jakes Harwell Drive southbound is queuing towards Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
All I can say, to me, let's give us the medal count.
Well, it's increasing in terms of Team South Africa. Donald Rampadi and Lucas Sithole have become the first South Africans to clinch a medal in wheelchair tennis at the Paralympics after claiming bronze in the medal match. The duo claimed 6-2, 4-6 and 10-8 win against Leandro Pena and Manito Silva. And their bronze takes Team South Africa's tally to 4 medals and the second medal of the day. So a big congratulations to Rampadi and Sithole for making this history in terms of South Africans. In football, Marumo Gallants coach Dan Malisela has finally managed to cut down the squad number to a manageable size ahead of the 2024-25 season. The club returned to the PSL top flight after purchasing the Morocco Swallows status, inheriting existing contract alongside players that were already on Gallants' books prior to the sale. And Malisela has confirmed that he arrived to find a squad of 48 players, which he has now trimmed.
Difference between when I came in, when I first started, and now. First of all, it was the number of players that we have to trim down, and then now we've gotten a squad to a reasonable number. I still think it's a big number, but for a team, I think for a team that is starting, it is only safe to have 33 players.
How many?
33
players.
Including the keepers. We were 48.
48?
Yeah. Yeah, we were 48.
From one club to the next, SuperSport United will be without key player striker Bradley Grobler for the next 5 months. So this is according to Gavin Hunt. Matsatsan's goal ace was taken off in the MTN 8 quarterfinal defeat against Orlando Pirates earlier this month and has undergone surgery. And now Hunt says that he sees this as a major setback for his side ahead of the Betway Premiership season that is getting underway in 2 weeks.
You know, we lost Igatoro, we got 8 goals. We lost Bradley, we got 12. There's 20 goals at that team. Bradley won't play. So we need, obviously, you know, we need to get front players, you know. Yeah.
How serious is Bradley's injury?
Well, he had an operation in his groin, so a groin muscle that, if I tell you, obviously, you know, all know groins, it's not the best place to get an injury. It's a delicate area, you know, so it takes time.
In terms of the business of sports, with the transfer window done and dusted, PSL clubs have reportedly spent 119 million rand buying players in the current transfer window. In terms of outgoings, the clubs have received around 52 million rand, with some players leaving the country. While internationally, English clubs have spent around 1.29 billion pounds. That's around 30.2 billion rand. Then in athletics news, Ugandan marathon runner Rebecca Cheptegei, who competed in last month's Paris Olympics, has suffered burns to over 75% of her body after allegedly being dosed with petrol by her boyfriend. Cheptegei is in a critical condition in a hospital in Kenya after the attack on Sunday afternoon. And according to Star newspaper, Cheptegei's boyfriend was also burned in the attack and described as a domestic dispute. The 33-year-old, who finished 44th in Paris, has a house in Kenya where she stays when she trains in the country, and currently the police are investigating the matter. Then in cricket, Proteas woman captain Laura Fulvard believes that experience will carry the squad to glory at the coming ICC Women's T20 World Cup in the United Arab Emirates. This comes after Cricket South Africa released a 15-player squad list to represent South Africa at the 10 Nations contest to be staged at 2 venues in the UAE, in Dubai, and also in Sharjah from the 3rd of October. Proteas women were the host nation at the previous World Cup and lost by 19 runs to Australia in the final. And Fulvard says that the squad will continue from where they left off in the previous edition.
Obviously, with it being my first World Cup as captain, I think it'll be an amazing challenge and a huge honour for me. Obviously, with each game being against new opposition, I think it's something that I haven't experienced yet in my captaincy career, so really excited for the opportunity. Obviously, we made the finals in last year's edition, so I think looking at the pools and the way it's set up, I think we'd be hoping to do the same this year, and I think in knockout cricket anything can happen. But yeah, just knowing that we have the ability to reach the final with a pretty similar squad, I think will give us a lot of sort of confidence in the back of our minds.
Right then. I'll have more in the next hour.
All right, there we are. So we spoke about the Paralympics, the Olympic medal counts in terms of how much we should get. What do you expect? We always do better at Paralympics, right? What do you think?
This year.
I never asked you that. It's a bit late, isn't it?
Sure, it is. Perhaps I'll say, okay, we're currently sitting on 4 medals. I'll say 6.
That's an increase of 50% from today. Okay.
2 more medals.
That's it. We'll see.
Do you think I'm being too hopeful?
I don't know. I don't know enough. So I'm just like a supporter, like just go and win, But I can't say much more than that. But I wish we get 15 or 20. But like, who am I to say that? I'm just saying. All right. You can count your medals and we'll talk again in an hour's time.
Righty.
Welcome to the team, Andile.
Thank you.
What will be your first order of business?
Well, ensuring our greatest assets are taken care of.
Our vehicle fleet?
No, our employees. You see, I want them to feel confident in our company's employee benefits, and Old Mutual Corporate is perfect for that. They take care of everything, from retirement benefits to health and group risk solutions, consulting, and more. Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, let's certainly get to the markets with Makwe Masilela, who's the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. As always, good chatting to you. So we got the Woolies final results as well as the daily local and global markets.
Yes, Ashraf, and afternoon to you and to the listeners. Remember, with Woolies, David Jones' contribution is only for 9 months as it was sold, and this period has an additional week compared to the previous period, and both South Africa and Australia continued to face challenging operating environment. Both geographies had to deal with high interest rates and inflation, which impacted consumer confidence, footfall, and spend. South Africa also had to deal with the port congestions, taxi strike, and avian flu in the first half of the year, and turnover was down 10.7%, profit and headline earnings per share down 29%, the dividend per share down 5.2%, and markets darling Nvidia, which is an AI bellwether, realized the biggest one-day market capitalization drop in the history of the stock exchange, wiping out almost 5 trillion rands after they were told to come and answer with other companies to the U.S. Justice Department about violating antitrust laws, and global flight from stocks continued after fears about the U.S. economy economy, but traders added to bets of a jumbo US rate cut, and another positive data suggesting a turnaround in our economy. Our latest quarterly business confidence rose to an almost 2-year high, underpinned by the return of sustained power supply, hopes about the economy, and political certainty after the elections, and after an extended sell of oil prices attempted to rebound. That is at the back of rumors that OPEC Plus was discussing delaying a planned output increase in October, but the rebound failed. Brent crude is down 1% at $72 a barrel, and a sharp sell-off in stocks forced what we call a rush to cover margin calls, adding a bit of pressure on the yellow metal, and that's ahead of the US job numbers. We see gold is down 0.1% at 2,489, but platinum is up 0.4%. US is mixed, with Europe and the JSE still in the red, with resources down 1%, and the rand tried to firm up a little bit. It's now 17.84 to the US dollar, 23.46 to the pound, and 19.76 to the euro.
Okay, perfect. And we'll have more on the markets in about 45-50 minutes. Mark, thanks for your time as always, and we will chat tomorrow.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Okay, so we will take further comments and calls from you on a range of issues. In fact, we've had two dominant themes coming through today when we always ask the question, what moves the national pulse? One has got to be the post office. How can it be saved? The other one has been a response to the American position where the U.S. federal prosecutors have filed criminal charges against 6 senior leaders of Hamas, right? So we've had responses on that as well. We may well have a response on the next conversation that we are having, because it concerns the position regarding the future of either the EFF or members of the EFF now who are moving on, it seems, day by day to the MK party. So we do know, this is really interesting, right? Just weeks after announcing that he was mobilizing the party to appoint a new Secretary General, that being Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. The former leader of the new FF Students' Command, Impo Morolwane, has now resigned from the party, and he's joined Floyd Shivambu, and he's not just resigned, he's obviously joined the MK party. So what does this mean, for the person, considering he was effectively lobbying and canvassing as late as a couple of weeks back? What does it mean for him? What does it mean for the MK party again? And what does it certainly mean for the EFF again? Dr. Insekalelo Breakfast is with me. He's a political analyst. Good chatting to you once again. You're live with the National Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Right. What do you make of this?
Well, I'm not taken aback by the turn of events. I mean, I saw it coming. Even Malema, when he was addressing the audience, when he was going separate ways with Floyd Shivambu, he did indicate that there will be a lot of people will be walking out of the EFF. So I think this is an expression of that a prophecy, by him. But I think the EFF has tended to be in denial in terms of the lack of democracy within itself, because one of the reasons that he's putting forward is that he has been in pain due to the decisions that have been made by the upper structure, that some decisions have been made on top and brought down to at the bottom. So I think there is a need for a democratization of the party, because the party uses a militaristic organizational style of decision making, which is problematic, because he indicates that he had preferred Ndlozi, and I think that did not sit well with some people within the EFF.
I mean, one thing is resigning or leaving your party, because, I mean, people do that all the time. And here you move to another party, and it's not just any other party. It's a party we've been talking about a lot since May 29. Again, the fact that he's also moved on to the MK party, what do you read into that?
Well, I think MK has been the biggest winner, of late, because it comes across to be, articulating a more, coherent framework for the black majority, some might argue. We saw Floyd also jumping ship, joining MK, but I think it was expected that some who were very close to him who will also join him into MK.
So I mean, also this, I think, will have a negative spillover effect in terms of the relationship between the EFF and the Umkhonto weSizwe in Parliament, because they formed a bloc as a black caucus. So I think it will create a scope for trust issues, because EFF is the biggest loser. You know, it is losing people, and MK is gaining. So the losses of the EFF are the gains of MK. And the question is, what does that mean going forward in terms of the partnership between MK and the EFF?
What do you think it means?
No, I think, there will be a tension between the two organizations, because, how do you trust an organization that is benefiting out of your own membership? You heard about what Malema said, that anything that has a footprint of the former deputy president must be done away with. And I think that also will have to do with how the party interacts with MK going forward.
Interesting. Gayton McKenzie tweeted, I think it was yesterday or the day before, he said, and in his own unique style, saying, "Well, you see, the GNU has survived longer than the caucus, than the Progressive Caucus." I mean, in many ways, he's right now, isn't it? Because what's the Progressive Caucus exists, but as per your point, what's the value of it right now?
Yes, the black opposition bloc has been weakened, because of the tension between MK and the EFF. But I think it's still 3 days, though, to say that the GNU has succeeded. I think we must adopt the wait-and-see approach on that score. But I think the tension between the EFF and the MK, it does weaken their involvement in terms of holding the executive accountable.
Well, to be fair, he didn't say it succeeded. He said it's lasted longer than the Progressive Caucus, right? But Floyd Shivambu also just tweeting relating to the same issue around Impo Morolani, and his tweet is interesting in terms of what he says, right? He says, "Welcome, Comrade Impo Morolani, to the MK party. Your genuine and legitimate passion for the liberation of the black majority and Africans in particular can never be doubted. You have always been on the side of the people." Now, for me, the last line is the most significant one, suggesting that to be on the side of the people, according to Floyd Shivambu, means you're going to have to be with the MK party. There's something about the MK party that is resonating with people in the same way that there's something about the EFF party that is finding many of people within the party disgruntled.
Yes, you must remember MK is a breakaway of the ANC, and the party has been revolving around the personality of Msholo, who has had a huge support base. So the party is benefiting from that personality of Zuma, but also I think Floyd is encouraging Paul, who has just joined the party, that he has made the right call, but also maybe appealing to the conscience of other people who are within the EFF who might want to walk out of the party to do so.
Okay, let's leave it at that, unless there's something else you want to raise. Is there any other insight that you feel that we need to be talking about?
I think we're living in very interesting times. There seems to be a problem within the EFF, and it's going to be interesting how they are going to perform in the upcoming local government elections, because it looks like things are falling apart.
Well, maybe my next question then is the most important one for now, with regard to the EFF, which is who's next?
Precisely. We had Malema taking a swipe at some of their prominent leaders like Ndlozi, that how can you be perpetually silent but the party is under threat, blah, blah, blah. So there seems to be also a tension between top leadership and the rank and file of the party in terms of who are the real members of the EFF.
Well, let's leave it at that. Who are they indeed? Thank you for your time. Much appreciated, and I'm sure we'll chat sometime soon, as and when the political pulse of the nation resonates. Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who's a political analyst. Thank you for connecting on the National Pulse.
The Chill Zone with Bertha Charuma.
Have you ever had a work romance? How did it work? Did it last? Does it last? Or just jeopardize your working life or career?
Yeah, work wife. I had one at work. Yeah, things didn't go so well. Let's just say I had my house burned down. I lost my wife and kids. Yeah, after that, I never wanted a work wife.
It is frightening. It is actually so frightening. And obviously it's worse because he mentions that he had a wife and kids. He had, a life outside of this relationship that was happening at work.
That's Linda Yendes.
Bertha Charuma, Fridays, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, who wants to comment about the latest goings-on regarding the EFF and the move to the MK party? Kirk has a view. Kirk in Cape Town, hi.
Hello, Ashraf. Shalozi is doing his damage. I think it's going to take one phone call to Brother Julius, and the party is going to collapse. There will be a GNU between the EFF and MK. I cannot see the EFF surviving, and there's only one place that they can go, and that is to the rank and file of MK.
And you're saying that it'll take one phone call. What would be the content of that phone call? To say what?
The content will just be, all is forgiven, young man. You belong with me. We have our history together, and come home. He can't go back to the ANC.
Wow,
so he has to go to MK.
What a choice for Malema, ANC or MK party. I mean, he may say
a very big climb down for him. But he's a politician. They do that well.
I know, but for now he's in charge. He's the man in charge of the EFF. So thanks for that call, Kirk. Let's talk not so much innovation, but animation. Right up next.
SAFM, setting the nationwide agenda daily.
Right, so one of the things that we certainly want to touch on often is talk about, marketing trends and trends in innovation as well, and the issues around tech and other forms of gadgets that we think are really, really important, okay? So let's talk about that now regarding animation in South Africa with Tumelo Matabola, who's a 2D animator. Appreciate your time. You're now connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. What is a 2D animator?
So basically, a 2D animator is a more traditional form of animation that is typically done using drawings to create the animation, whereas 3D animation is computer-generated models in 3D space. So essentially, we create the animations using drawings and more advanced 2D rigs.
Okay. So, and in terms of, for those who, for some people, they understand, they get the issue of animation, but it's an evolving industry. I mean, give us an insight into what does animation do now compared to what it may have done, a few years back?
So now animation's a really fast-growing industry, especially in the spaces of education and tech, because it's a very versatile tool for teaching and also like communicating stories to audiences of like a vast range. And in today's age, we have so much accessibility to the internet, and it's way easier to learn and gain the skills to become an animator than it was, say, a few years back. I myself studied at the animation school, but even before that, like, I remember just having a very cheap camera, a phone camera, and some action figures and creating little stop motions. It really is accessible.
Well, and I understand that you have a particular position regarding the role that animation can play for societal change, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so something I'm really driven by is having the work I do create an impact and a change in society and the world we live in. I'm really motivated on how animation can be used as a form of activism. And this can take shape in many ways, but I think a strong anchor that animation can be used as activism in is education and educating people about underspoken about topics and societal issues. And I'm actually giving a talk on such at this animation and VFX event called Avi Josie, which will be taking place next weekend on the 15th and 14th. And I'll be giving a talk about inclusive narratives in animation. So it's one of my drives as a creator that gives the work I do purpose.
Okay, I understand you've put together an animated movie that we can find on YouTube. Tell me about that.
Yes, so part of being a student at the animation school is that in your final year, you have to create an animated short film with a group of your peers. So last year, my team and I, we created a short film named Bewilderness that's just been released on YouTube and actually won the New York Film Festival's Bronze Award. So we're really proud of it. And essentially the film is very silly, it's very playful and lighthearted. It's about a lumberjack who goes off into the forest and he's really destroying the nature around him, but then kind of has to pay the price. And it is a little bit of a commentary on how in today's society we don't look after our environment. But overall, it's a really funny animated short film to watch.
Okay, well, I mean, you talk about, it's called?
Bewilderness.
Bewilderness, well, and you're understating the fact that you get this bronze or third prize in New York. I mean, that's significant. What did they say about it?
I think it shows that the film innovated in one way, because there are a number of short films that are released every year globally. And the New York Film Festival, to my understanding, is an international event where they look at different student films and get different entries from the whole globe. So I think one thing that stood out about our film, Bewilderness, is that we used a very atypical method of animating where we incorporated 2D and 3D elements into the film. And essentially it's a very mixed medium collage-ish kind of a film, and I think that's what really stuck out to the jury when they were analyzing the film.
Well done. So just here's the last thought. I'm sure people listening say, well, I want to get into the animation industry. So give us one short answer of your long journey into that industry.
Definitely a tip of advice that I could give which helped me get into the industry is doing research and putting myself out there. From when I was a young child, I always knew that I wanted to make cartoons and movies, and that led me to pursuing art and studying at the National School of the Arts, and that then propelled me into studying animation. So I think a key component is not to limit yourself. Don't think that these careers like film and animation are too ahead of you. Simply do research and see what the resources around you are, because they are. You can even study it on your own. Like, college is a great thing to do, but it shouldn't be a limit to you, especially when it comes to a creative career like this.
Absolutely right. So, well, thank you for talking to us and certainly sharing your thoughts and your own journey, and well done on that award in the New York as well, and certainly for inspiring us. So, Tumelo Matabola, thank you for your time. Much appreciated indeed, right? Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that we certainly want to focus on to a large degree as soon as we get a chance, as much as we can, is issues on marketing and branding and tech and innovation, as we've just done, including, business strategy. So there's aspects of business strategy that you actually want to hear about, then certainly maybe just drop us a message to say, that's what's missing in my life in terms of my business. I want to know about it. Now, the marketing industry or the branding industry would be reflecting today, or yesterday indeed, and today, on the passing of Ken Preston. He was quite a legend in the marketing space, and Jeremy Sampson, himself a legend as well, paid this tribute.
Hi, Ashraf. It's sad to record that Ken Preston, one of the co-founders of the South African publication Brands and Branding, passed away at the weekend after a long battle. Brands and Branding is an annual publication that really was the state of the art of the branding scene of South Africa, and Ken and his wife Lynn started it back in just about 1990s, that sort of time. So it was something annually we all looked at. So very sad news. I think it's a huge legacy. And I have to say condolences from the branding world to his wife Lynn and family on their loss. R.I.P. Ken Preston.
Absolutely. I had the privilege of meeting and knowing and talking to Ken and his wife when I interviewed him on the media show that I used to host on a Sunday morning before. And I've got his books. I certainly have all his branding books, but I mean, he now is no more with us. So rest in peace, Ken Preston. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf. Concern over SA's crime intelligence and dozens killed in Nigeria attack. Good day to you. The Police Minister, Sinzin Kunu, says the state of the country's crime intelligence is extremely worrying. He was speaking during a meeting of Parliament's Police Committee, where the latest crime figures were discussed. According to these numbers, for the period April to June this year, more than 8,000 people were murdered. More than 9,000 rapes were reported during the same period. One concern raised by MPs is the state of crime intelligence. The Minister says he shares these concerns.
The state of crime intelligence in the country is a source of major worry. One, on capacity, two, on skills level, just capacity from numbers, and then technological aspect on it, and a number of other issues, including administratively.
The SIU has given a damning report about the scale of fraud by lawyers when launching medico-legal claims against government. This includes lawyers using the same method in the private healthcare industry. The SIU briefed Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, or SCOPA. The unit's head, Andy Motibi, says in some cases there were collusion among lawyers, doctors, nurses, and even the Office of the State Attorney.
Still on the general observations, the evidence that we have gathered really points to collusion, and this is the collusion is really quite widespread. Collusion between attorneys, collusion between touts. Touts are really a phenomenon that they use to employ other people to look for their business. Collusion between nurses and doctors, both in the private and public healthcare. So, some of the examples we've seen is that nurses would steal medical records and illegally handed them over to the attorneys.
The assault case against the mayor of the Machabeng local municipality in the Free State, Tanutkula Kalipa, is set to start on the 1st of next month. He's facing charges of common assault and 2 counts of criminal injuria. He allegedly assaulted his own bodyguard when he was trying to separate him from an angry crowd at an Mbizo in Oudendaalsrus. He was arrested and released on warning. In Panama, community outside Jane First in Limpopo is in shock after the deaths of 4 young people. Their deaths are linked to the consumption of homemade brewed alcohol laced with methylated spirits. In just 2 weeks, 4 lives have been lost, with 2 deaths occurring last week alone. Concerns have been raised about the availability and accessibility of the toxic substance. Community leader Letsasi Rapolo says the community is devastated.
Our community is facing a devastating crisis as our young people are suddenly and tragically passing away due to the consumption of methylated spirits. The unknown substances mixed with the spirit are a major concern. We are considering a complete ban on the sale of the spirit as the last resort. We urgently call on the government to intervene and address this issue, particularly in Panama. Our young people are the future and the hope of our community, and we cannot afford to lose them. If necessary, we support a total ban of the sale of the spirit to protect our youth.
Dozens of people are reported to have been killed in northeastern Nigeria when militants attacked a village. Police say it's probably a revenge attack by the Boko Haram militant group after 2 of its fighters were killed by local vigilantes. The BBC's Yusuf Akinpelo has more.
Residents of Mafa village in Yobe State said several more residents were still missing and estimated the death toll to be over 100. They said the attackers came on motorcycles, opened fire on a market and set shops and homes ablaze. Police spokesperson Dongus Abdul Karim said the attack was an apparent retaliation for the killing of 2 suspected Boko Haram fighters by local vigilantes. He said the village was rigged with explosives, but troops have managed to defuse them.
Top story, the police minister says the state of the country's crime intelligence is extremely worrying. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
In sports this hour, Rampadi and Sitole become the first South Africans to win a medal in wheelchair tennis, and Sabalenka looking for another trophy. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound has a crash before Woodmead Drive, causing some delays. The N12 westbound in Southgate has a crash before the M1 interchange. The M1 southbound is queuing traffic through Crown interchange towards Boysons. In Bedfordview, the N3 northbound queuing on the link to the N12 east at Gilulis interchange, and the N3 southbound has a stationary vehicle near Van Buren Road. In KZN, the N7 eastbound has queuing trucks towards South Coast Road. The N3 westbound is queuing towards the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. In Cape Town, Jan Smuts Drive southbound in Athlone queuing towards Klipfontein Road, Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock, Imam Haroun Road eastbound in Lansdowne is queuing towards Turfel Road, and Voortrek Road eastbound slow moving through Maitland. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Hey Mike, congratulations on your retirement.
Thanks, Andile. Are you preparing for it?
Yes, but not just for myself.
For you and?
For me and my employees.
Oh.
You know, since we moved to Old Mutual Corporate, their retirement funds have not only been safe and secure, but gaining competitive returns through exposure to diverse investment markets.
Impressive.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to celebrate the rich tapestry of our nation's diverse cultures. From the vibrant beats of our traditional music to the flavors of our unique cuisines, every culture tells a story of strength, unity, and identity. We honor the heroes and heroines who laid down their lives for our freedom, reminding us that our shared heritage is what makes us strong. Together as one, we celebrate who we are because our culture is our identity. This Heritage Month, let's celebrate every culture, every story, and every voice. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What for you moves the National Pulse today? It's certainly been amongst the big issues. The story of the South African Post Office, maybe a month to survive, and that's basically it. We've had conversations around the United States position regarding 6 senior Hamas leaders. We've also been chatting about another EFF member who's now moved off, not just left the EFF, but he's also moved on now to the MK party. That's Impo Morolani. And there's more. There's also been news about a collaboration agreement between the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture on the one hand and the Department of Education regarding, particularly on sports in school, something that we have absolutely touched on. Here's a question I've asked before. Let me see. Do you still have business cards? Do you print the business cards and dish it out at events, or in fact have you gone the complete digital route? I'm sort of in between there, so I'm confused, and I want you to help me. Which one do you do? Do you accept business cards or give out, or do you transfer your card, your digital card, simply via a Bluetooth or other form or a WhatsApp that just gets transferred between one and the other. You can call in, that whatever it is you want to get off your chest or to touch on the issues that moves the national pulse today. 086 000 2032. You can also send us a voice note. It's 0614 104 107. And by the way, talking about that number, the WhatsApp number, if you want to join the National Pulse channel, just say join channel. Now, my issue of the business card, I think, is relevant to the conversation we're having now, because we are talking about the future of the post office, where lots of people are sending less letters. They're sending emails, which somehow seems to have done the job, but it doesn't do the job for the post office. Now, we've heard this earlier in the conversation that we had with the former CEO, Mark Barnes, after hearing that they've got a month to survive. They need about just under 4 billion rands from Treasury or else. And Mark Barnes made the point, one, he said that the numbers don't gel for him, from having assets over 5 billion when he was there to now having this massive deficit. He believes there's monies and there's funding missing. Number one. Number two, he suggests there needs to be a leadership change no matter what happens. But there is a space for a post office. There needs to be a post office, but it requires leadership change. And then the third aspect, that they have to be innovative to understand that they're playing in a very, very different world, a different space compared to what a post office traditionally is. So what then of the actual future of the post office? Let's get the thoughts of Anush Ruplal, who's the South African Business Rescue Practitioner. Anush, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good day to you and your listeners, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's understand this in terms of your position as the Business Rescue Practitioner. Do I take it that your role is directly involved with regard to the post office?
Yes, 100%. So the business rescue process is driven by the Companies Act. And if we cast our minds back to July last year, the SA Post Office was already in provisional liquidation. At that point, the Department of Communication and Digital Technology made an application to bring the entity out of liquidation and put it into business rescue. So my colleague Juanito Darmans and I were appointed as joint business rescue practitioners. And what that effectively means is that we assume management and control over the entity in order to draw up and implement a business rescue plan that turns around and saves this entity effectively. And once that happens, we can then hand it back to an effective board and new management, possibly, or the existing management.
Okay. So at this point in time, for want of a better word, you are the board.
That is correct. We act as the de facto CEOs and the board, and effectively we are custodians of or stewards of the entity in order to turn it around.
Okay.
So Juanito Darmans and I, for example, senior business rescue practitioners with many years of specialism and experience in turning around various entities.
Okay. So from the position where you took over when they went into provisional liquidation, final liquidation could well happen if business rescue is unable to rescue the business. I get that, right? How did we get ourselves into a position now where we're talking about 4 billion rands or else?
Yes, so the initial application by the department to bring the entity into business rescue was premised on, and this was obviously with the High Court. The application was made to the High Court, and this was premised on two tranches of funding received, the 2.4 billion and the 3.8 billion. In our business rescue plan, which we had then drawn up and which was adopted by and voted on by the majority of creditors, the 2.4 billion and the 3.8 billion was always an integral part of the turnaround because we needed the funding to prop up the business, firstly. So, the strategic drivers in our plan is effectively three drivers, and that's to stabilize, survive, and future-proof the business. So just to highlight that this is not a new requirement. It was an integral part of the business rescue plan as well as the application. So the 2.4 billion has been received. We had to meet various conditions, and the VRPs used approximately half of that to pay creditors who were compromised in terms of the business rescue plan, and the other half of the money was then used to pay retrenchment costs, part of that, as well as operational costs to keep the business alive, so to speak. The second tranche, which we're now anticipating to have received, and which we were envisaging receiving 6 months ago in terms of the plan, obviously has not come through. It was not in the budget speech, and this is where we have highlighted, to the portfolio committee that look, this is a heads up. This is possibly what could happen if we don't receive the money.
Okay. Why did it not come through? I mean, if they're aware of it, and if the plan was not to give it to you, and as you've sort of alluded to, if you don't get it, then there will be closure, there will be a liquidation, right? Then why would you even need to be raising it in Parliament at the Portfolio Committee yesterday, when obviously they could have told you this like 6 months ago?
Yeah, so obviously we have an administration change. So you have a newly constituted Portfolio Committee as well. This meeting was where we were able to present, and we've been, as part of the supervisory oversight on the post office, it's our duty to report. Obviously, we've been reporting to our department and so forth, and this was the chance where we could now then report to say, well, this is status. By the way, we still need the money, and we've got 2 months of runway, and we need the money to complete and implement the rest of the business rescue plan.
And had they indicated that they will say yes to it?
Well, so it's obviously a national treasury process, right? So I don't have the answer to that, but obviously all indications are that the funding, the intention was to provide the funding, because it was, like I said, in the initial application, and our adopted business rescue plan. We have, as far as the BRPs are concerned, we have fulfilled all our obligations to make the necessary applications, to make the necessary submissions, and these are protocols we have to follow with National Treasury, because they run certain funding rounds, and in order to balance out and you get the money from the fiscus and to fund not just the post office, but obviously the entire country and all the state-owned organizations and so on. So we are up to date with those processes. We've been proactively engaging with National Treasury through our department as well. And yeah, it's in their hands.
Okay, so I get it, you're saying you don't know, but at the same time you're saying you're pretty confident that they will give it to you, because that was agreed upon before. So never mind the governmental change, it may well happen. So let's take two scenarios. If it doesn't happen for whatever reason in the next month, then is that warning from your side an actual that the SA Post Office will shut down, will be liquidated?
So we've highlighted the runway, so to speak, that's left. Obviously, liquidation is not an envisaged outcome in terms of our business rescue plan. We don't want that, because we're trying to do everything possible to save the entity, to save the 6,200 jobs that we've preserved for the last 12 months. Obviously, it's more than that. It's really looking to preserve a national asset that's over 200 years old. And this is so valuable social infrastructure that has branches, fiber connection to all the branches, owned properties. It's a combination of social infrastructure that's in the rural areas as well. And sorry if I'm digressing, but it's really that important. And unlike the private sector, who can make decisions and close branches or stores based on profitability, we can't. We have a social obligation in terms, and it's a universal service obligation in terms of the Postal Services Act, to provide all South Africans in all geographical areas with affordable rates to send letters, to send parcels. And we have the exclusive license to do so. These are valuable things that acts in ways in the favor of saving the post office, because right now private operators are operating illegally to provide courier services and parcel services to South Africans. So there's an important distinction here. We don't have that luxury of cherry picking. We have to provide the service to all South Africans. It is a valuable South African asset.
Well, I'm glad you say so.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
But to your point, so what I'm saying is that we've given caution because we're compelled to advise the PCC, and we've got to be transparent. It's worth saving. We need the money. And if we don't get the money, then we're going to be very creative and obviously look and exhaust all avenues before we, go into liquidation. And that's not an outcome we want to work towards. And of course, we are exploring various aspects of partnerships, and that's throughout the entire value chain that the post office has. Bear in mind, it's a large and complex organization. It is a Schedule 2 entity in terms of the PFMA, which means it's a large state-owned entity. So by no means, it's not a small ship to turn around. So we've got to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah, I think that's understandable. So, I mean, your point about 6,200 jobs is noted. The point about the legacy, I mean, we in Heritage Month, that is a huge legacy in terms of the role of the post office. Mark Barnes himself has spoken for the retention of the post office. But there are two other aspects that I think one is to consider, which is Mark Barnes suggests that the numbers don't gel. There's monies that are missing. This is outside of trading losses on a monthly or yearly basis. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so when we walked in, I can't comment on what other speakers or leaders, say without talking to me, with the same facts and circumstances. So I will respond as best as I can. When we stepped in, unfortunately, the post office was at a standstill in terms of operations because it had no money. It had 8.7 billion of liabilities. Through our business rescue plan, and through the compromise, we're now sitting in a solvent position with creditors at 440 million as an example. Okay? In terms of monies that we've settled creditors through the compromise, and we've brought all that to current. In terms of monies missing, very difficult for me to answer because, like I said, when we stepped in, we inherited an entity that was virtually at a standstill. So we do have obligations in terms of the Companies Act to investigate all affairs and matters of the post office. And if something does come to light, we have to report that to the relevant authorities. And we have been doing that where we've identified certain cases of, smaller cases of fraud and so on. So we'll continue doing that. That assessment is ongoing.
I understand that, yeah. Now, what about creditors? Besides the risk of the 6,200 jobs, who's the biggest creditors now, besides the compromise you've already done?
Yeah, so right now we basically settled approximately 99% of all the creditors that are owed money in terms of the compromise. We're sitting with current operational creditors. In terms of the business rescue plan, all our payments to medical schemes, to the retirement fund, to the post bank, as well as our operational creditors, that's all been paid up. That's all up to date. So we're sitting in a situation where the entity is solvent, but we still need money for liquidity going forward. And an important point here is that the 3.8 billion that we are wanting, the bulk of that is to invest in infrastructure because unfortunately past leadership has neglected the infrastructure so badly that there hasn't been upgrades in the last 10 to 15 years, which makes me beg the question or wonder, what have they done with that money in the past? But be that as it may, this is what we are planning to do with the money. We want to upgrade the infrastructure so that we can put the entity on a basis that it can sustain itself going forward.
Okay. And maybe the last thing for now, Mark Barnes was very clear that the post office must exist, but it also has to consider its position and relook at its business model in the light of massive global technological changes. I mean, is that an obvious point that the post office can't exist the way it is right now?
100%. I agree with that point. And that's exactly what our business rescue plan talks to as well. So we've analyzed and studied what the other global operators, postal operators are doing globally. We are obviously a member of the Universal Postal Union, which is the second oldest agency in the United Nations. So they're 150 years old in October. Next month is World Post Day, in fact. And we obviously try to tap into fellow postal operators to understand it. So we've done our research. We agree with that. So it's a combination of traditional letter post. When we look at what other postal global operators are doing, it's approximately 25% of the business. The rest of the business is around financial services, it's around digital solutions, it's around courier and parcel. And we believe with the funding, we can obviously improve the infrastructure then to start leveraging all of this in order to not just protect current revenues, but to generate these new revenue streams. That's exactly what our business rescue plan talks to.
Well, as you all know, when it comes to the post office, the postman always rings twice. So there certainly has to be room for another life beyond what we have right now. Anush Ruplal, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. The South African Business Rescue practitioner. Thanks for connecting on the National Pulse.
SAFM. This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to celebrate the rich tapestry of our nation's diverse cultures. From the vibrant beats of our traditional music to the flavors of our unique cuisines, every culture tells a story of strength, unity, and identity. We honor the heroes and heroines who laid down their lives for our freedom, reminding us that our shared heritage is what makes us strong. Together as one, we celebrate who we are because our culture is our identity. This Heritage Month, let's celebrate every culture, every story, and every voice. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get some comments. We'll be chatting shortly to the Minister of Basic Education regarding some groundbreaking positions on MOU with regarding to the Ministry of Sport, okay? But let's get your thoughts. And again, the Post Office definitely moves the national pulse.
Ashraf, on the issue of the Post Office, isn't it that they are competitors, these couriers, are they not involved in destroying Post Office so that they can have monopoly over that space? Just like these trucks having destroyed our rails so that they can monopolize that space. Corruption is not only done by smaller people. It is done by these big companies, Adit and Bushbuckridge.
Okay, but we don't have any proof for that. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think the biggest issue has been just the general inefficiencies regarding the Post Office being run as it has been run for a very long time. I mean, the model absolutely has to change. Right. Okay, let's move on to other issues that are of significance. The Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, and the Minister of Basic Education, that's Siviwe Khwarube, they signed an agreement that is meant to progressively transform access to both sports and cultural programs in schools. Now, I have spoken about it before. I say absolutely yes. Let's find out more about it with the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Khwarube. I appreciate your time and you're connected to the National Pulse.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. So, often I've spoken on these platforms and others that the big problem with grassroots sport is school sport to a large degree in many parts outside of private schools have come to a standstill. So tell me what has been agreed upon now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, one of the things, the reason why we've signed this MOU and, is to bind both departments to a partnership. I suppose people can say, why don't you just simply collaborate? Well, we don't just want to have a verbal agreement about, the fact that we need to invigorate school sport, but we want to have a legally binding agreement that binds the departments. And here's the reason why. We've got 13.5 million learners in our schools. And the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture has budget and resources and support that they can lend to schools in particular that are particularly in poor, vulnerable areas. And what we are saying is that we want to identify Quintile 1, Quintile 2, Quintile 3 schools that have not had access to good quality sporting resources such as fields, such as all of these things. And we want to be able to build for them so that we can start to find the real gem and the real talent in our community.
Absolutely. So give us a sense of the nature of the MOU in terms of does it mean funding? Does it mean infrastructure build? Does the money come from you, from sport? Where?
Yeah. So we made an agreement on 22 areas of focus that we are going to be focusing on these two departments. So they cover both school sport, physical education, and various cultural other things such as debating, such as the flag in every school campaign. So it's really a wide-ranging basket of programs, about 22 of them that we have inserted in the MOU that we want all 24,000 schools to start to progressively realize access to these things. Secondly, what we've done is the reason for the signing of the MOU is to also unlock funds which sit with the Department of Sports and Culture into our schools. Because often the problem is that from DBE's point of view is that we are limited in what we are able to produce and what we are able to do in schools, particularly in township and in rural schools. By unlocking the kind of funding that the Department of Sports and Culture has, then it means that we're able to support those schools. Because our view here is that it shouldn't matter whether you come from Kwakwa or Gombu or Sandton, but at the very least, we need to be able to give children a fighting chance to find their passions, whether it's culturally or in sports, but also so that we can be able to develop our sporting codes and our cultural and our artists from a very young age. And I think it's a winning formula as a country. And so that's why we've partnered up with the department to say, unlock your funds. We've got the platforms available. Here are 24,000 schools. Here are millions of children. They just need their potential unlocked.
Okay, just the last thing. Were the funds therefore locked in the past where, education and sport were not speaking to each other, and therefore sport had funds, education didn't have the funds but didn't know how to speak to sport, and therefore sport was neglected? Was that the case before? You were not involved, I know.
Yeah, so look, there have been other people have raised the fact that there have been MOUs that were signed before, and then I think part of the reason of the complication or the complexity was that the departments were not able to see or find middle ground on where does your mandate begin and end, where does the mandate of sports and culture begin and end, and where does DBE begin and end. But what we've sought to do with this with this MOU, which has been in the works for quite some time, is to clarify those roles, to say that we are providing the access to the learners, we are providing access to the schools. We would like you to offer those services to us because it is also in your interest to find talent in our schools, and it is there.
Well, I tell you what, I'm saying thumbs up, and I'd love to see the results. This could be a case of sport, the sports and education, government of sport and education unity, something along that line. Things are changing. Sibiwe, appreciate your time. Minister of Basic Education, Sibiwe Huarube. There we are. Dramatic changes, maybe dramatic. Well, let's see how it plays out, isn't it? Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines. The police minister says the state of the country's crime intelligence is extremely worrying. The Namakwa municipality in the Northern Cape has tabled a 19% reduction in residential property rates. And Japan has managed to eradicate a population of mongooses that were released on a southern island to kill snakes, but ended up endangering local rabbits. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Randburg is queuing towards Malibongwe Drive. The M1 northbound has a crash before Woodmead Drive. The N12 westbound in Southgate has a crash before the M1 interchange. The M1 southbound is queuing through Crown interchange towards Boysons. The N1 northbound in Midrand queuing towards Samrand Road. The N1 in Pretoria has a fault fire reported with smoke affecting visibility between Garsfontein Road and Rigel Avenue, so reduce speeds and drive with care. In KZN, the M7 eastbound has queuing trucks towards South Coast Road. The N3 westbound is queuing towards Pavilion Shopping Centre exit. The M7 westbound is queuing towards Belleville Road exit. Umhlanga Rocks Drive is slow moving through Glen Ashley, and Chris Hani Road westbound queuing at the N2 highway. In Cape Town, the N2 outbound slow moving towards the R300 highway. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The N1 outbound slow moving towards Okovongo Road. And the N2 eastbound has a crash reported at the airport. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Okay, Timmy, you're going to give me those medal numbers just now for the past, but let's start with the present.
Righty, Donald Rampadi and Lucas Sithole have become the first South Africans to clinch a medal in wheelchair tennis after claiming bronze in the medal match at the Paralympics. The duo claimed 6-2, 4-6 and 10-8 win against Leandro Pena and Manitu Silva. The bronze takes Team South Africa's tally to 4 medals and the second medal of the day. Just talking about the first one earlier on, hand cyclist Peter de Prier won South Africa's third medal at the Paralympics in Paris, taking bronze in the men's H1 individual time trial this morning. He finished the 14.1 kilometer course in 36 minutes, finishing behind Italian Fabrizio and Hordes of Belgium. Then in rugby, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi trained with his teammates this morning in Cape Town, and if you remember, Kolisi suffered a facial fracture, and the Boks had said that they would monitor him and see if he'll be fit in time for when the final squad announcement tomorrow. They face New Zealand on Saturday in their rugby championship match, and the team will be announced tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. In football, Kaizer Chiefs head coach Nazruddin Nabi has expressed his excitement after securing the services of Bafana Bafana midfielder and the club's development product Njabulo Blom, who is back on loan from Major League Soccer side St. Louis City. Chiefs confirmed Blom's arrival yesterday, and he's on a loan deal until June of next year, including a buy option. And Nabi says that Blom's experience and familiarity with Amakhosi makes him a big addition to the squad.
But I'm very, very happy for coming for Jabulu. Experience, he's a boy for the family. Bradley, I'm sure have a personality, have the quality. You need to use him correctly. And his young player is not. I will continue together with the committee to work hard with my staff, with scouting unity to look the best player for the club, for the team.
Well, talking about Chiefs, Amakhosi have collaborated with FIFA and the Department of Correctional Services on an initiative called Twinning Project, specifically targeting female inmates at the Johannesburg Correctional Centre. Now, the program looks to rehabilitate women offenders by providing coaching lessons so they are equipped after their release. And according to the club's statement, Chiefs coaches Arthur Zwane, Dylan Shepherd and Aubrey Mutibe will lead workshops, and there will also be training, mentorship and opportunities designed to promote their physical, emotional and social development rehabilitation. In cricket, Proteas women captain Laura Fulvard believes the experience will carry the squad to glory at the coming ICC Women's T20 World Cup in the United Arab Emirates. This comes after Cricket South Africa released a 15-player squad list to represent South Africa at the 10 Nations contest to be staged at 2 venues in the UAE and Dubai and Sharjah from the 3rd of October.
Obviously, with it being my first World Cup as captain, I think it'll be an amazing challenge and a huge honour for me. Obviously, with each game being against new opposition, I think it's something that I haven't experienced yet in my captaincy career, so really excited for the opportunity. Obviously, we made the finals in last year's edition, so I think looking at the pools and the way it's set up, I think we'd be hoping to do the same this year, and I think in knockout cricket anything can happen. But yeah, just knowing that we have the ability to reach the final with a pretty similar squad, I think will give us a lot of sort of confidence in the back of our minds.
In tennis, world number 2, Aryna Sabalenka is putting together a dream run at the US Open, and she hopes to keep the magic going when she faces number 13 seed Emma Navarro in the semifinals tonight. Sabalenka has beaten 3 straight seeded opponents on her run to the semis, most recently defeating number 7 Qinwen Zheng of China in straight sets, and she says she's hoping for another trophy. Well, with that said, it is a wrap from my side for now.
So did you, reflecting on those numbers?
Yes, in terms of the medals.
Previous years, right?
Yeah, previous years. In terms of the Paralympics 2020, we finished with 7 medals overall. In 2016, 17 medals. Okay. And in 2012, 29. But I'm just looking at the most that we've had thus far. It was back in 1972, 41.
1972.
Back then.
No, that one we didn't play. That was apartheid South Africa. Really, I'll be very clear about that. But certainly, no, really.
Listen, it's in the record books.
Well, not in my record books. Anyway, if anybody wants to argue with me, they can certainly bring it out. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. But okay, I think that period when they did well was when actually Oscar Pistorius was in his prime, as well as Natalie Dutoit, and that's the time they did really, really well. Okay, we'll chat again. Tomorrow.
I think that's in Sydney, 2038 medals. Well, that's it. It is a wrap from my side.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the markets with the SAFM market update. Jimmy, good chatting to you as always. What's moving the markets today?
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening to our listeners. We're going to be taking a look at some developments from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They got approval from the FSCA, that is the regulatory body, the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, on segmenting some of the listings on the main board. We're going to try and understand that and understand what it means for investors. Does it mean more opportunities? Does it mean less opportunities? But that's what we're going to look into, and we're going to then go from that conversation to look at some of the JSE companies that gave us results. Cashbuild gave us year-end results alongside Woolworths as well. So we're going to look into both of those companies with both of those CEOs and try and see how they fared in their respective sectors. Then we've got a conversation with Alan Gray around the geopolitical risks that exist outside of South Africa and potentially around the world, and how to navigate those risks from an investment point of view. And then, because it's Wednesday, we've got our executive feature today. We're chatting to the chief executive of Fortress Real Estate Investment Trust, Stephen Brown. We're going to get to know him a little bit better outside of the work version of Stephen that we are so accustomed to. Before we get to that, the markets have had quite a bizarre day. It seems as though it's been a bit of a mixed bag with some data points coming out. Largely red from Asian and European markets, with the Sydney ASX down 2%, Hong Kong down 1.3%, mainland China down 0.5%, the Nikkei in Japan down 4.5%. Lots to dig into that in our segment a little later on in our show. European markets, not much better. CAC 40 in France down almost a 4%, down 0.86%. The DAX in Germany down 0.75%. The FTSE, the best performer, down 1/3%. If we look at our local markets, financial stocks were the only green light that we had today. They were up about 0.46%. Industrials were down 0.8%, and resources down 2/3%. As a result, the all share was down 1/3%. The top 40 was down 0.37%. But we did see some signs of life on the rand. Not much, though. Against the dollar, currently at 17 rand 86. 1 euro will cost you 19 rand 79. 1 British pound will cost you 23 rand and 48 cents. If you're moving to Australia, 1 Australian dollar will cost you 12 rand and 1 cent. If we look at some commodities movements, the gold price showing a better day than it was yesterday. $2,493 an ounce there. Brent crude $73.13 a barrel, still close to that $70 a barrel level that makes us oh so happy. We'll dig into these and other stories a little later on, though.
Okay, before I let you go, I mean, we hear this often, so as your response to the masterclass, what does it mean when we say leveraging?
Effectively, it's using borrowed capital to access greater exposure in the market. Now, companies do it all the time. They do it for buying out shares or buying out investors. They'll go to a bank, they'll get financed, and it'll allow them to leverage their position. So they might not have all the cash on hand. For you and I as investors, when you think about purchasing shares, you can actually go out to a brokerage and purchase something called a CFD, which allows you to leverage off of the broker's financing or the broker's structuring. So you can effectively buy 1,000 shares at the cost of perhaps, say, 100 or 10 shares, depending on how your deal is structured. But it allows you greater access to the market at a fraction of the cost.
And now we know. Thank you for that. Enjoy your show. And I'm certainly going to urge the audience, listeners, to tune in as well. 6 to 7 with Jimmy, and then sport, from business to sport coming up. Sport after 7 o'clock.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so just to pick up on what the conversations we had earlier on, remember from the post office point of view, right? But before that, before speaking to the person who is currently, as he says, de facto the manager, the CEO of the company, because of their position as the South African Business Rescue Practitioner, I'm talking about Anush Ruplal. We chatted earlier on to Mark Barnes, and you can listen to that podcast as well as just about all the podcasts of the things we've done today. Now, he's the former Post Office CEO, and he made some comments on a range of issues, and we thought, let's do this. Let's play some of them, which will certainly get you thinking about what he thinks and the state of the post office is and where it should go. The first one is the point about the numbers don't tally.
Well, it seems it's been coming for some time. Okay. I left the post office over 5 years ago now, but all the numbers since then have showed a quite spectacular decay, not explained only by the losses operationally and otherwise that were made, but totally irreconciling irreconcilable destruction of value. And let me give you 2 or 3 pointers. One, when I left there, the net asset value of the post office was 5.2 billion. That is to say, its assets exceeded liabilities by 5.2 billion. It wasn't a couple of years later when it was made known that the liabilities exceeded the assets by 12.5 billion. That's just impossible, given that the operational losses were, 2.2 billion or so a year. So there's a huge missing unaccountable number.
Mm-hmm.
When I left there on the 31st of July 2019, Post Bank had 4.6 billion on deposit with the banks. That's all gone. We had no national treasury guarantees, and we had no request for funding. So something quite extraordinary on a grand scale has happened. Not just operational failure, but systemic failure of a much higher magnitude. So inevitably, this thing was going to die. And my view is that it's very difficult to imagine it being resurrected unless you fundamentally change the definition of its role in South Africa.
Okay, so then he spoke about the value of the post office to the country, particularly that footprint.
Well, it's common cause that a post office that's just a post office won't survive in a modern technology world, where digitization has taken over and all of these kinds of things. But that was never my definition of the post office. I've got on my desk in front of me the presentation I made to the then Deputy President in 2015 about what I saw the post office as. And those things, most of them, are still valid. And I'll give you a very 1-minute summary. The post office had a commercially irreplaceable footprint, bigger than any retailer, bigger than any bank, and particularly focused on the rural areas. That is commercially irreplaceable. That's the first one. The post office is an organ of state, which is also unique. Okay, and the post office had a bank, not to lend money, but to get access to the national payment system, and it had a banking license to take deposits from the public because those were guaranteed by National Treasury. What could you have done with that? What I wanted to do with it was to make a post office a place of trust where South Africans could go for services they otherwise weren't easily able to get in the normal commercial field. And those would range from post, from doing financial transactions, from downloading education, to distributing antiretrovirals, to having approved funeral policies, to having, getting your passport and integrating with the broader state.
And then finally, Mark Barnes spoke about the important issue of social grants.
If we had continued with social grants, there's 200 billion of social grants. You don't have to keep a big percentage of that cash flow to make a profit. We were talking about a net profit in 2019-20 of some loss of 400 million. Okay, the losses since then have been excess of 2.2 billion. So what I'm saying is, if you properly construct the balance between commercial necessity and developmental mandate, you can construct a completely transparent division between what constitutes state subsidy and what constitutes commercial competitiveness, and then you do it. Yeah,
right. Why has that not happened then? I mean, even in the time that you were there, because you could see it coming.
Well, it did happen in the time that I was there. We had no borrowings, no national treasury guarantees when I left, and we were a functional post office there. You can look. All of these things are available. And this is not my opinion, it's the opinion of the Auditor General, it's the opinion of all of the statistics that were tabled at the Portfolio Committee and so on. But I refused to allow the bank out of the post office under my charge, because there isn't a single post office in the world, by the way, that is commercially sustainable without access to the national payment system so that they can participate in the flow of money.
He also said that if he was asked to come back again, he would consider it, provided there's a complete change of the way management is run. There we are. Interesting thoughts indeed. Let's now, you can comment. By the way, if you can't even comment live, you can certainly post on social media, Facebook, SFM Radio, and on the X platform on Twitter. You can tag SFM Radio and certainly tag me, Ashraf Garda. Looking forward to your thoughts and conversations, particularly around the post office, the way ahead.
The future of education is here. Impact offers 2 paths to the future. Design your own homeschooling journey with Impact Homeschooling, or let our experienced teachers guide the way with the Impact Online School. Get quality future-forward education. Visit www.impact.co.za today to register for 2025.
It is Game On!
Game On!
It is where the real lovers of the game dive deep into detail of the upcoming local and international fixtures. Join us on Game On as Mr. Sizwe, Click Click Bang Mabena and the legends zoom closer to the thrilling performance of the pitch personnel.
How was your favorite team's performance?
Find out on Game On every Saturday at 2 p.m. on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
We will wrap up the show with the feature we called Winning, where we look at people, organizations, institutes that are winning something that the Post Office clearly is not doing. Let's talk to Jackie Gallagher, who's the Sparrow Schools Educational Trust founder. That's amazing. So 35 years of dedicated service. Jackie Gallagher has now announced her retirement and stepped down as the general manager of the Sparrow School Educational Trust. So let's find out exactly what's the plan and what's the story for Jackie Gallagher. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. You're now connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, you know, as I've mentioned in the intro, we speak to people who are winning, and you certainly have been winning for a long time, and you continue winning even after you retire.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's talk about your journey. I mean, so clearly a lot of what you do is defined by the Sparrow Schools Education Trust. So tell me about it and the journey and the role you've played in it.
Yeah, I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet. So in 1989, I started working with children back in the dark days of apartheid. At the time, you know, there was all whispers of all the schools being opened up to children of any race, any color, etc. And I was approached by 4 parents who asked me if I could tutor their children on a Saturday morning, for black children, and if I could assist them into getting into the open white school. So that started the journey. This led to me meeting the most amazing person, Dr. Agri Cluster of the Sowetan newspaper, who advertised in the Sowetan under the Nation Building Program. And the next thing, I had 550 children today morning. Also showed the desperation for education. And from that, it led us to opening up a full-time school in 1993, which was purely focusing on bridging. We always focus, and Sparrow still to this day focuses on children that have been left behind or have been left out, and where there's a desperate need. So obviously, 1994 happened. We were bridging school to start. We helped children to gain access into the open white schools, as they were called at that time. And in about 1998, this started to change, where we realized we had more and more children who had learning difficulties. And over the years, we then changed our focus. And today, we run 2 schools, one in Melville, our primary school, called the Foundation School, and combined technical skills school, which is in Sophiatown, where we focus on children who have learning difficulties, barriers to learning, which could be a result of a number of things. You know, it's kind of almost a discussion for another day. But
I can imagine.
A lot of the times, it's children that just, you know, haven't been at school.
Okay.
We have children that come from an...
Okay, so fast forward to now. I mean, when you then measure the impact, what's the position of these children who have now gone to the Sparrow School compared to others who have not gone? There must be a difference, right?
So firstly, we create a pathway for our students. So if we are able to mainstream them and then get them back into a mainstream school, if not from the primary school, they go onto our high school, which is, as I said, a technical skills school, where we focus on vocational training. And from there, many of our children gain access into our further education and training college. Or we find a pathway where they can go into a vocational or FET college. So that's really what the difference is, in that we really look at the exit program for these learners, not them just arriving at the school and, sitting there for a few years and then leaving, not being able to read or learn anything.
And are you able to share, anecdotally, the type of students who've attended and succeeded because of that, compared to what would have happened if they were not part of this bridging school system, and what's happened to them in their lives? I mean, are there one or two people you can share?
Sure, yes. And I can share a little bit. We had a young man who came through our primary school and then went on to our high school. And we then did, we took 10 of the students from the high school and did a bridging program with them around the assistant chef program, because we run professional cookery, which is an NQF4. I hope I'm not getting too technical. So we had to get them through the assistant chef program first as a bridging program. And the one young man, Michael, just excelled, has since gone on, first went on to work, and then went on to further his studies to become a chef, and has been very successful in that. We have a number of students who've come through particularly the chef course, but we've also had students who've come through the electrical program. We were granted a wonderful opportunity to train 50 electricians, and we've got quite a number of the students who, because our program at the college is where they are with us for a certain amount of time, and then in the workplace where we monitor them, they were able to already be offered, 12 of those students have already been offered full-time employment, even though they're still busy with their training.
Okay, that's fabulous, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much.
So, I mean, there's so many stories. In fact, one of our young men now lives in New Zealand and won the King's Award this year. He's a rap artist.
Okay, wow.
And he sent us a wonderful story to say, as an orphan, he'd been placed at Sparrow and he eventually got adopted, went to New Zealand, and how this had an impact on his life.
Okay, wow. I understand one of the programs that you'd like to talk about is the phonographics reading therapy program. Tell me about that.
Yes, so this is an amazing program designed by Jenny Taylor from Read for Africa. She's one of our service providers. Understandably, our budgets are extremely tight. We're really working with, very poor children. So when we look at different remedial programs that we can bring in, we have to look at where we can assist all the children at not a major additional cost. So phonographics is a reading program specifically designed for the African child. And we've just had wonderful success in that. Grade 2s, for example, we assess all the children in the beginning of the year. And last year, when we assessed our grade 2s before they started the program, the literacy levels were extremely low, and very few of them could read, and even more of them couldn't read for meaning. And by the end of the year, our grade 2s, 82% of them were reading, and they were reading with meaning, and they could understand exactly what they were reading. So the phonographics program, we really believe, if I can just say, Ashraf, is once children can read, we can then really sort out, do they actually have a learning problem? Because a lot of the problems are that our literacy levels are so low that often we can't assess a child on where the actual problem is or what the actual problem is. So this phonographics program, which is now done with all our children at the primary school and at the high school, is just having huge success.
And I feel so strongly about reading that it's a very rare occurrence that I give people gifts which are not books. Maybe it's a wedding gift, and maybe then a book is not appropriate. But otherwise, it's books, because I want to encourage reading. As we wrap up then, Jackie, I mean, when you reflect on your career, right, your own personal involvement in career, why do you think, what has always fired your mission and your purpose all through these years?
Well, education saved me. I grew up in a really poor family where nobody ever went to university. In fact, nobody even matriculated, and I was granted sort of an olive branch and was able to go on and study to become a teacher through a bursary. And it changed my life radically. And so I've always believed that education is what really can change our country, our people, because we give people dignity. You know, once you've got an education, once you are able to just look after yourself from an educational point of view, you know, you are able, so many more doors open up for you. And so I've been passionate about education my whole life. And I've also very much, and anybody at Sparrow will tell you, I don't like a handout. So, you know, all our children pay something, because then there's ownership and nobody's holding the power. And so our parents are really committed to coming, firstly paying the school fee, you know, that they can afford, and then coming to parents' meetings so that they're part of the system.
Wow.
And they're part of the decision making.
Good way to end up.
So,
yeah. Jackie Gallagher, thank you for your time, and glad we're speaking to you in this feature we called Winning, and you certainly have been winning, and very importantly, you've allowed other people to win as well, and that really is the multiplier effect that, of course, you know only too well, I'm sure about that. So really great privilege to talk to you, and best wishes as you move on from 35 years inside Sparrow, and now 35 years, maybe even longer, outside of it as well. Thank you for your time, Jackie Gallagher. That's the show, right? Lots more to come on SFM. Let me just tell you, Jimmy, of course, comes up with a market update. And then Michael Abramson with sport, and then coming up after 8 o'clock. And then Oliver Dixon at 10, and, you know, Tulas's we host the breakfast show 6 to 9. So that cycle continues all throughout the day, 24/7. Let's get the news now. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. Concern over SA's crime intelligence in Northern Cape municipality to cut property rates. Good evening. The Police Minister, Sinzim Kunu, says the state of the country's crime intelligence is extremely worrying. He was speaking during a meeting of Parliament's Police Committee where the latest crime figures were discussed. According to these numbers, for the period April to June this year, more than 8,000 people were murdered, more than 9,000 rapes were reported during the same period.